Are you a billionaire?
No.
Bullshit, because you do $100 million in revenue. Listen, you can go eat donuts with Schultz, but I fucking do math. So
God, you ask all the right questions.
Our sales fucking flying off the shelf.
I was really hoping you weren't asking this one. You're like, okay, let me do the math. I'm like, yeah, he knows.
When I saw all the emails, I saw Derek's thing, and I saw podcasts. I was like, oh shit, here we go. He's gonna go through the fucking ringer.
I don't think Derek did anything wrong. You know, I called Derek almost immediately to say thank you for doing this.
How much money do you think you've spent total on steroids?
Listen, it's enough.
Nah, I need a number. Come on, what is the number?
It's enough to buy a car every month.
So basically, you spend about $250,000 on steroids and got 1 million followers on social media.
That sounds really bad to say. There's a lot going through my head right now. Some people are like, hey, why aren't you doing this? I'm like, listen, do you know how much is going on and what I'm dealing with?
You think The Rock's on steroids?
You know, here's the thing.
Nah, don't here's the thing. What, do you think The Rock is on steroids? All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got the Liver King here. I thought a great place to start was right now you're like in the shit, right? You've got this massive social media following that exploded over the last couple of years. Allegations came out about steroid use. You're like, yep, I did steroids. I said I didn't, but I did them. And if you open your phone right now, people are saying all kinds of crazy shit. They're saying you're a fraud, you're a liar, you're a scammer, name your thing that they could say. What does that feel like psychologically? Like when you open your phone and you're just got like the mob coming after you, what is that like?
Man, I got to move forward. You know, what's going on right now, I have to deal with 100% face on, right? I know I always butcher this, but Winston Churchill said something like, you know, when you sense danger, tackle it head on, and then you cut the consequence in half. And this has always been my experience in life. So it's like, let's not spend a minute crying over spilt milk. Like, what I did was wrong. You know, I immediately apologized to my kids. I've immediately apologized to everybody. You know, I feel horrible about this. I probably regret this more than anything else I've done in my life. Out of all the dumb, stupid shit I did this, you know. But, you know, I feel like a deeper obligation. You say, how's it feel like? I feel like a deeper obligation to really do my job as a CEO of the Ancestral Lifestyle. Not just for me to model, teach, and preach this message, but we need 100 Liver Kings out there. We need the guys like Ben Greenfield. We need the guys like Andrew Huberman, you know, that are saying the same thing. You know, these 9 ancestral tenets, because people are hurting with such depth and desperation that this message has to get out. And so how does it feel? You know, I'm embarrassed about it. I feel like I humiliated myself. I feel like I earned all of it. I deserve all of it. You know, I read the DMs and there's a lot of hate. There's also a lot of support, you know, and guys that have seen the Andrew Schultz podcast, Flagrant, and
Schultz isn't funny.
No, not at all. But
Akash is funnier than Schultz.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, they're a good team, by the way. I think Akash was actually really coming for me, by the way.
Yeah, he came after me too. Don't worry.
Okay, good. I'm not alone. And so that, you know, that I'm like, I deserve all of it. You know, I deserve all of it, and I'm going to handle all of that, you know, right now. And you know what? I really do want to take a second also to tell you thank you. You know, for having me on today, giving me this opportunity. Every Saturday, I give this barbarian speech, and I say, we do this to honor our earliest ancestors, our recent ancestors, and all of this ancestral heritage in between so that we can be here today and enjoy the spoils of the modern world. And what I really mean by that is all that ancestral heritage in between are veterans that have protected the perimeter so that we have the freedoms that we have today so that we can be on this podcast. So I want to say thank you to you for your service and protecting the perimeter for us.
Yeah. So when you think through kind of this entire situation, one of the things that fascinates me is you have multiple phases of your life, right? You have kind of your childhood, which I don't think a lot of people understand how tough that was and some of the things you went through. Then you had this, what I'll call almost like a device salesman, you know, phase of your life. Then you guys had the dentistry phase of your life, and then you have what everyone knows now as Liver King. And so maybe let's just go through each phase and kind of get some of the context. 'Cause I think one of the parts, when I told a couple of friends that I was going to talk to you, they're like, why the fuck would you talk to him? I can't believe you're going to do this, but whatever. And I said, look, I've had people on that folks love. I've had people that I've had conversations with that people absolutely fucking hate.
PBD told me yesterday, he goes, I've had murderers on here. And I'm like, holy shit, okay, you think I feel better now?
Yeah.
You know, you put me in the same context as that.
Yeah.
But yes.
But the conversation is important. And part of it is like, you can see things on the internet. You can judge people by 30-second clips on the internet, right? I've been judged by 30-second clips on the internet, and it fucking sucks. At the same time, you sit down and have a conversation with somebody, you understand them. It doesn't mean you're going to agree with them. Doesn't mean you're going to disagree with everything, but you at least understand them better. So like, take us back, and who were you before Liver King, right? And what is your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What exactly was that experience?
Yeah. I was born on a naval air base in Ceiba, Puerto Rico. I come from a military family. My dad had been moved around, stationed, you know, from base to base. He died before I have any memory of him. And so I really predominantly grew up in San Antonio. I come from a single mom household where I have an older brother, about 2 years older than me. I don't know how far back you want to go, but I think, you know, I would just say, like up until about 10 years old, I feel like I had the best, you know, childhood ever. My mom would take us on ski trips. I know she loved us. You know, she always complimented us. She always put her arms around us. She gave us incredible opportunities. She gave us lots of freedom. And she also disciplined the fuck out of us too. You know, you think all that's normal, you know, growing up. And then you realize, you know what, your parents are just trying to do the best job. Your parents is trying to do the best job they can. And guess what? They probably learned that from their parents too. And so I just remember then around 10 or so going to middle school. And in the first day of middle school, I got my shit handed to me. And you know, I never had anything like that happen before. I mean, I just remember in, you know, 5th grade, it was like I was king of the mountain. Everything was great, you know, just go to the play. I mean, there's nothing to think about or worry about. You don't measure yourself against anybody. And then the first day in middle school, I mean, everybody was I was like going to school with adults. These kids everybody had a mustache, had underarm hair. You know, they were twice as big as me, and they all spoke a different language. I mean, they all spoke Spanish, you know, and I didn't speak any Spanish. Even though I was born in Ceiba, Puerto Rico. Listen, I'm not asking for any sob stories, but I was hearing impaired, and I had plenty of ear surgeries, and I didn't actually speak my first words I was in speech therapy forever. And so this is why I didn't actually learn Spanish, because they were afraid that I wasn't going to learn English. So I get to my first day there. This one guy, Felix Sanchez, hawks a loogie in his hand, lets me have it, almost knocks me out. First time I'd ever been, you know, handed something like that. But man, this just kept happening. And I came home, this kept happening the same day. And I remember the way I looked. I was a skater at the time, just skateboarding, you know, thinking, oh, this is what people do. But then I get to middle school, there's not one person dressed like me, or that looks like me, or that's getting their shit handed to them like me. And I came home and I cried to my mom, and I said, I'm never going back. And before I could finish the sentence, she didn't even listen to the rest of the sentence. She made it so crystal fucking clear that you're going back, and that I'm not even going to listen to anything else you have to say. That's how I remember it. And so I just remember thinking, okay, maybe tomorrow won't be as bad. Maybe that's the first day. Every day was like that. Every single day was like that. And somewhere along the way, I remember that one of my mom's boyfriends gave us some hand-me-downs. And the whole time I'd been trying to blend in and look more like my peers. And I wore these cool Red Wing boots, these Guess jeans, a cool shirt. I felt like $1 million that. This is the first time in like a couple of years going to school, I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good about myself. Later that day, we had gym class. And I come back from gym class, all my shit's gone. All my stuff's gone. And I told Coach Moberg, hey, all my stuff's gone. And he searched the lockers. We never recovered it, you know. And I ended up going home that day in my socks and somebody else's clothes, some gym clothes. But this continues really all through middle school. Just I had no self-worth in middle school. Yeah. I remember looking in the mirror, and I've told this story several times, so people might hear this again. I was just completely embarrassed and ashamed of the guy in the mirror. This brain and this body, I never stuck up for myself, not one time. And I wish somebody at least told me, hey, man, you got to at least fight back. You got to at least take a swing.
Why do you think you didn't fight back? Was it something where you thought you couldn't? You thought it's not worth it? What do you think it was?
You know, from day one, I saw how giant and powerful everybody was. And then every day there's bloody fist fights at my school. And a teacher wouldn't dare break that shit up because the teacher gets retaliated on. And so the gym teachers would have to come from 5 minutes away. And it was the most violent thing. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that before.
So the kids are just fucking going at it at school.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, these are the days you could wear steel toes to school. Kids carried little 380 guns. I mean, there were weapons everywhere. There were no metal detectors. There was nothing like this. But there were just bloody-ass fights. And so something got imprinted up here, like, you don't want any part of that. And so, like I said, I don't know exactly why. I just know, like, I actually didn't have it in me. I'm sure I always did. But I believed I don't even have it in me to push back. You know, so I just retreated, and I took the punches and I took the push downs. And, you know, I never used the restroom because that's where fucking got, you know, the worst. So I remember holding that shit all day long. And then, of course, like, you wouldn't have a sip of water in school, you know, because you're not going to make it any worse. So this is what happened most of my middle school. You know, it was just like, I just felt inadequate. Like, I knew that the world would be a better place without me.
What about your relationship with your brother, right? So I grew up in a family of 5 boys, and one of the things our parents always told us was like, hey, you 5 are going to fight all the time at home. We know that. There's no stopping that. But when you guys leave here, it's you guys versus the world, right? And I remember specifically one situation where one of my brothers, he got his finger broken on the bus. They used to play this stupid game where they would basically turn around on the seats and they would like slap at each other's hands.
Yeah.
And he ended up breaking his finger pretty bad. And we got home from the bus, and you know, he walks home. He's like, "Hey, Mom, look!" And like his finger's like literally, you know, at an angle. And I remember talking to my parents, and they were like, immediately, "What'd you do?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I wasn't involved, right? Like, don't get me in trouble over this." And they're like, "No, that's the problem. Was you were there with your brother, and something happened, but like, what did you do? Did you stand up for him?
Yeah.
Did you have his back? Whatever." I remember that moment vividly because it just reinforced this idea of sometimes you just got to find who are the people who are gonna, you know, you can surround yourself with that always have your back regardless of what happens in the world.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your mom, but what about your brother and kind of what was your relationship like him?
Yeah, he was 2 grades above me. So I was in 6th grade, he was in 8th grade. And there was no discussion about anything that happened at school when I came home. You know, there was no message from my mom, you better fucking be there from them. There was no message from my mom, hey, how you doing? Was your second day any better than the first? There was none of that. I mean, from the first day, she made it really clear, I'm not hearing any of this. So there was no more of this shared with her. And so, in her defense, there was no discussion with my brother, you better fucking watch over him.
Yeah.
And so my brother wasn't, I have no recollection whatsoever of my brother standing up for me or being there for me. You know, I learned these values later. I did end up getting strong. And when I got strong, I'm like, I became the big brother. And there, you know, people would come after my big brother. And then Mark would run to me saying, hey, man, I need your help. And I loved being able to help him. The tables got turned, you know, from working out. So I wish I could tell you that my brother was there for me. My brother wasn't there for me.
How old did you start working out?
I was around 8 or 9 at the time.
Yeah. And when you first start, like, are you just doing push-ups and sit-ups? Like, what is that?
My mom's boyfriend at the time gave us his old bench. Yeah, I don't know if there's any irony in this, but he was a pharmacist, a big fucking pharmacist, like 6'4", really big. Michael Gleinsner. I don't know, all this might be edited out, but he gave me this old bench that was falling apart, rusty as shit, and I went to town on bench press, curls. I started getting all the muscle magazines. I would read the exercises I could do. It was one of those old ones that had like the leg extensions of the curls out there. I wish I was doing power cleans and squats and stuff like that. But that's the kind of bench I had. That's the kind of working out I was doing. I really wasn't doing push-ups, but I remember I did have some self-worth back home because some of the other kids up the street, they couldn't bench nearly what I could bench. And I knew that I was getting strong, but I also knew at school, any retaliation from me, any standing up from me, you got 30 other people that are coming. And that's another thing that happened at school that I think I left out. The fights would happen, and if the tables got turned for a second, you got 20 other people jumping in that are going to beat the fuck out of you. And I just remember thinking, man, I don't want any of this.
Was the school aware of this stuff happening? Were they trying to stop it, or it was just a situation where like, yo, this happens at our school, we do the best we can, but like these kids are just going to beat each other up?
I think both. I mean, it happened every day. It was part of the culture, and I remember...
That's crazy.
Well,
right?
one
To send your kids to school, and if you're aware that there's a chance that they're going to get in an absolute, you know, face-ripping fight every day, you're kind of like, you know, am I doing my kid a disservice to some degree?
Yeah, well, that's for sure what happened at my school.
Yeah.
And there was a history teacher who tried to break up a fight, and later that day, he got the shit handed to him by the
kids
gang.
were beating up the teachers.
Yeah. And the teachers know not to break up the fights.
Yeah.
The gym guys have to come over, and then nobody's messing with Coach Boberg.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy looked like a lineman for an NFL team. But that's what happened. I mean, and I think that's part of the concern that I was terrified. You know, like could that happen to me?
Yeah.
And so again, I know how much. This is a great example. This guy Chuck came to school, another white kid like me, way bigger than me, but still he came to school, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna make a friend. I could do this. And I kind of made a friend. But he starts getting in these fights, and they're bloody as fuck. And he's doing a pretty good job, actually, at these fights. We start making a friendship, but he fought back enough times, they took him in. And then it was him against me, and then he picked a fight with me.
This sounds almost identical to like prison culture, right? Where basically people set up alliances with each other, and some of it is literally based on race, language, creed, you know, whatever the kind of way that the population cuts themselves. And then it is almost the most animalistic thing in the world of just like who has physical dominance over other people.
It was pretty animalistic. And yeah, I again, like I tell my kids all the time jokingly, you know, you guys go to jail, you better fucking pick a fight on the first day. You know, and again, like I wish, goddamn, I wish somebody just told me. I wish somebody told me, man, this is what's gonna happen to you.
Yeah.
I wish somebody just said, and when it does, you're gonna get your fucking shit handed to you. You're gonna get bloody, but you're gonna be able to push back, and you're strong, and you'll get through it, man. And it's gonna happen 5 or 6 times, but you'll get through it, and they'll take you in. But nobody told me that. And you know what? I just also want to make it clear that I know we're still talking about this phase. You want to hear about all my phases, but I couldn't be more grateful for this was my first true rite of passage in life. And I had to figure this out. And I had a little bit of help along the way. One of my friends' moms knew about someone who challenged me to a fight. And I said, why would I do this? I'm not getting into a fight. Long story short, she mentors me and says, you're strong. You got to get into this fight. She drives me to the fight.
She drove you to the fight.
She drove me to the fight to fight this guy. This kid had to get in a fight in front of his gang to be initiated into the gang. And so it was this kid, Chris, with like a bunch of people. So anyways, what ends up I don't know if you want to hear the details of the fight, but I found out how strong I was that day. And it had to take all these fucking years to figure that out. It took her saying, hey, you're strong, you can do this. Her son Justin's like, yeah, man, you could do this. My brother was around at that time. My brother's like, yeah, man, you could do this too. I'm like, you guys have no fucking idea. Yeah. You have no idea, because I knew I couldn't do it. But you know what's also cool about skateboarding is like you drop it on a 15-foot ramp with vert enough times, and you just fall and you fall. I mean, imagine throwing yourself off a 15-foot building, you know, and again, you don't fall 15 complete feet, but you take enough spills and you're like, oh, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Enough experience says I can develop high courage, and one day I can face danger, and I'm going to be okay. And what ends up happening, you know, through that fight is I realized, like, I actually am strong. Like, I looked pretty strong. I actually was strong. I figured out that I was strong. And I actually let him go. I had him pinned on the ground, and I could have done what I needed to do to him. And you know what? Maybe it's because I didn't have the experience. Maybe it's because I looked in his eyes, and I saw how pathetic and scared he was. And I saw myself in his eyes, and I couldn't strike him. Sometimes I think, fuck. I really regret that. Like, that could have changed everything for me. I think it could have. But a lot of people have told me, man, I respect you so much more for not doing that. But again, I think this is a rite of passage for me. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But I ended up figuring it out. And I was getting strong the whole time. But man, this happened. I got this fight. And I doubled down on working out. I mean, think about this. I'm some kid at home. I'm working out once a day. But now I'm working out twice a day. And now I'm really learning, you know, doing everything in the magazines. Arnold Schwarzenegger was my hero. You know, anything he would post at the magazines I was doing, I had all his posters everywhere. And so that I think would, unless you want to get into it more, would summarize my 10 to 14, 15-year-old self.
What's interesting to me is a lot of the things you're describing still happen today in schools, but now it feels like maybe society's changed, maybe the way that people, young kids, because social media or what, I don't know what it is, but the story that maybe we would have heard 20, 30 years ago, right, was if you're a young kid and you're getting your ass kicked at school, if you're getting bullied, if you're whatever, you basically change schools, you stand up for yourself, you work out, you do something to try to impact the situation. And it usually was the release of working out or building a friendship with another bully that could, you know, back you up or whatever. Now, I think a big fear of parents and many people in society is like that kid who's getting bullied goes and gets a fucking gun and shows up to school and just starts shooting people.
I want to make a comment about that because I had my list. And this is, I think, when Jordan talks about, you know, the young men today that are hurting and hating and suffering and struggling the most, when you don't have self-respect for yourself, which is me, when you don't have any respect from your peers, this is me, there's enough time that goes by where you start to become dangerous to society because you can get a gun. All the kids at my school had guns, so I knew I could get a gun. And so I kept a list of the guys that I was going to take care of when I could get myself a gun. You know, that's how much I hated what was going on. It was like, it was either myself, I thought about that myself, taking my own life, or figuring out a way to get them. And so
and do you think that's just like a human nature thing, right? Is that like you eventually reach a breaking point where you're just like, these people have been fucking with me for so long, I have to do something, whether it's fight them with my fists, whether it's shoot them or whatever. Like why is it that even then when people had guns at school and it wasn't kind of the environment it is today, the response, like the human nature response was exactly identical to what it seems like young kids today are going through?
I think that nothing in life really stands still. You know, everything's evolving. And I think that's the evolution of what happens. You know, again, an expert like Jordan Peterson can tell you like the trajectory of that evolution. I don't know why. All I knew is like, okay, the hurt and the hate that I had, this can't continue forever. I mean, I did this for years. And so my 15-year-old, actually, it was between 10 and 15. I was in middle school, so I think I was in 7th grade, so maybe I was like 12 or something like that. My bus driver committed suicide. And at that time I knew, okay, this is actually possible. Now I could think about this.
And the kids were talking about it, like the bus driver committed suicide and like word spread throughout the kids that he committed?
You know, there were so many fights on our bus that he would have to stop the bus. You know, let's stop fighting. He would have to try and he was a big guy. He was a really big guy. He could break up fights. And then one fight he had a lot of trouble breaking up, and I don't even remember exactly what he did. But I think he got suspended. And then the next day, the bus didn't come. And then later that day at school, they announced it, and they said, hey, we're here to talk about it, you know, kind of deal. I'm like, oh, my God, like, this can actually happen. I'd never heard of this ever before in my life, but I'd heard of it then. And so I just think that that there's this trajectory, like, there's only so much of that you could take, either for yourself. You know, you got to do something, you know, for yourself. But doing it even for yourself is like, I'm going to take care of these guys, you know? And I think that that's an issue, like, with violence. It's like people can get a gun today. People can drive a car today, you know?
Yeah, they can use any tool that is part of everyday life and use it as a weapon if they so choose, or if that's what their intentions are.
Yeah. So I want to make this point about this silver lining is, you know how much hate that I've received from the beginning of social media, which is at least 10x right now. But when I see this hate,
that's shocking that people hated you at all at any point.
Okay. Okay. I'm like, well, is he serious? But the thing is, I know how that feels. You know, like, I know exactly how that feels. And, you know, whenever you read a word or a text or you hear the word, it's like, it's up to your brain to assign meaning to it. And so since the inception of Liver King, whenever I got any of those hate messages, I'm like, I know exactly how this person feels. This was me. And this person's hurting the most. And this person is actually why I have this why in the world, because people are hurting at these desperate rates. And I know the solution to get them better. And so I got to find a way to connect with them, you know, because if you see some of these messages, like, you might think, I can't believe you didn't retaliate with words, you know, like, and I'm like, and I can't tell you how many times I've written back, I know how this feels. I know exactly how this feels. And let me tell you, I agree some of what you're saying is true, especially right now. The message I'm getting is, I know exactly how this feels. What I did was wrong. I own this. I am sorry to you, and I'm going to do everything I can do to be better. Please continue to engage with my content or some sort of ancestral living so that you can get better too.
A lot of that is understanding of the situation, but a lot of it's maturity as well, right? If you were getting those messages at 21, I don't know, you know better than I do, but like, would you be responding the same way, you think?
Oh, man, you know, I went on a tear. Once I finally got strong, after I got that fight and I got strong and I realized what I was capable of, this is why I have an obligation now to do whatever I can to do good, because I did a lot of not good things for those years.
What's the worst thing you ever did?
Well, they're all fights, you know, they're all fights. And, but I mean, there would be guys that like, I handed it to him.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean, but I mean, I never like sent someone to the hospital.
Yeah. Did you have like almost a redemption arc to some degree?
Yes.
Where basically, hey, I used to get my shit, you know, beat up, and now all of a sudden I'm doing the beatings.
Yeah. You know, there's these movies. Do you remember Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society?
Yeah.
These raised me. You know, and so the minute I got strong,
classics.
Yeah. I mean, really. And this is when I realized, look, you don't talk shit about your mom. Like, this is when I started to learn, I think, a lot of really valuable experiences, actually. And I think that this is one of the movies, you know, like somebody looked at us and they're like, hey, let's take it outside. And I would do that all the time. Be like, hey, man, you got a problem? Yeah, let's take it outside. And you know, most of the time, nobody wanted to take it outside. And when we would take it outside, this was an opportunity like, okay, now I'm actually pretty good at this.
Well, I'm fascinated by the bifurcation of society, because there's a whole bunch of people who think we'd be better off if that was still the way that things worked, right? Was basically forget what words you put on the internet, right? If you wouldn't say it to somebody in person, into their face, don't say it online type of situation. And I think it's Mike Tyson's like, hey, people forgot they can get punched in the fucking face.
Right? And people do this all the time too in crowds, you know, because you would think I would get a lot of hate in public. I don't get hate in public.
No,
you know, it's I can't believe how incredible people are. And then it reminds me, you got a vocal minority here, you know, that are being really vocal, because we get out in public and people are amazing, and you can feel their spirit energy in this connection. Every once in a while, you hear somebody mouth something off, and it's in a crowd, and you're usually going opposite directions. And I would never do anything to them.
Yeah,
like, you know, let them have it. You know, and I've told my kids, you guys know how much hate we're going to get right now. And we've not been out and about. Yesterday we were out and about and just trying to go onto the beach to go swimming as a family. Yesterday, by the way, my son Stryker beat me in a race. It's the first time he's just fucking smoked me physically, athletically. And we're
out on steroids.
He'll tell you. He'll tell you. He stacks the 9 ancestral tenets. But there was so much love. Yeah. There was so much love, and again, I'm expecting it. I'm expecting to hear it, and again, I'm going to say I deserve it all. Yeah, I own all of it, you know. So bring it on. I want them to be prepared. But it's really interesting, and I do believe that we would be far better off as a society. Say it to if you're not going to say it to their face. What do you think you're doing? You know what does it actually give you to do this anonymously on the internet? I'm not sure what that accomplishes, but I do know how it feels to hurt and to hate your life that badly, and maybe it makes them feel good for about a second. But obviously, nobody's actually getting to the root issue when they do that.
Yeah. I think anyone who has any size following on the internet obviously has people who love them, people who hate them, and everyone in between. But when you start to think about it as, wow, you really got to be in a bad place to say some of the things that are said online, there is this like compassion almost.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's hard to have that conversation with people who don't have a big online following, because they haven't seen it. They haven't seen how, I think, vile and just disrespectful, even sometimes dangerous people can be, right? If you got I don't know, maybe more than 100,000 followers on the internet, you do it long enough, you're going to get a death threat. You're going to get, you know, whatever the worst thing you could think
of.
People
send us my address. You know, they'll send the address. I'm coming. My address, you know, my personal address.
What do you do in that situation when somebody says that? You just ignore it, or you
normally
tell security,
I reach out to them and I try to. No, we don't. Listen, we got a pack of Dobermans at the house, and we have an arsenal of guns. Out of control, you know. I do believe this is my responsibility to be able to fight, provide, and protect my family. So listen, I'm not saying, hey, come, but if you come uninvited, this doesn't end well. I want to say I think that maturity started way before being able to connect and know what it feels like to hurt and hate your life, because this whole thing started. My business is really, as an evolutionary hunter, as an entrepreneur, started because my kids were sick because they couldn't breathe, and we
what does that mean? They couldn't breathe?
They were going to the hospital because they were allergic to things, and they would choke up. They would have anaphylactic shock, and they would turn blue. They were gonna die.
First time it happens, that's gotta be scary.
Oh yeah. I mean, but it keeps happening, and every time it's scary, and every time you think, oh my God, I could lose. But what if my kid wasn't here? What if we didn't have an EpiPen? What if we didn't have all this stuff figured out? There's only so much of that you take. We figured it out through ancestral living. Ancestral living was our savior. You know, this is why we so deeply believe in this. This is why I'll never stop this fight. Even if it's not Liver King that leads this charge, like, I'm going to make sure there's 100 other CEOs of the ancestral lifestyle that are preaching that liver is king. I know what that is like to go through that kind of health crisis. And I've always said, what kind of piece of shit am I going to be if I don't spread this message, if I don't make this my why in the world? So what ends up happening is I started a company, and the whole purpose of this company was to advance ancestral living. And we also sold some nose to tail nourishment, liver, bone marrow, heart, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of customers would come because they had a health issue. And what ends up happening invariably, you start to get some negative reviews. Hey, I bought this. I thought it was going to work for this. It didn't work. And they're mad. And I didn't have the money to spend on it. And I think all the reviews are fake and bullshit and all this stuff. And I just start thinking, oh my God, like you're just like my boys. You know, I got to figure out a way to connect with you. Before I even responded to them, I mean, I handled everything in my companies, right? And I know what it feels like to go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't listen to you at all because you're saying the same story. You know, you've been to 5 or 6 doctors. They don't want to hear it anymore. You're telling your friends they don't want to hear it anymore. So every customer that came to me, you know, like I know what it feels like. And so I'm going to connect with you. We're going to talk. And before I would even write an email back, I would always give them a refund. And I always knew the meaning I assigned is they're not really hurting and they're not hating me, right? They came to me because they were suffering. And we got to figure out a way to get them better. And oftentimes it doesn't have to do with a supplement at all. Somebody has high blood pressure. Maybe they just need to get midday sun. Maybe they just need to take off their shoes and connect with the earth. They need to deepen a parasympathetic bond. You need to put down the damn phone and hold the hand of somebody that you love and take in the sunset. You know, and so when you get to nurture them along with these 9 ancestral tenets and they see there's no financial incentive for you, and then you say, I think we got the initial product suggestion wrong in the first place. Let me buy you the next couple of months on the house, and we'll just see how you feel doing that. So I think where this initially came from was there was a connection. My kids were hurting. I knew that we were, and I was mad. Like every fucking...
Who were you mad at?
All the doctors. Yeah. You're telling me that all we can do is give them this EpiPen in their leg when they can't breathe. You know, you're telling me, and really, even if it wasn't like an acute situation, you could listen to them and they weren't breathing very good. You know, even in their sleep, it's like there was wheezing. And so I was bad. And so I think that's where I started to connect with this whole philosophy is I understand that hurt and hate. And they came to us because they were suffering with something. They're still suffering with something. And I do believe that the path forward is ancestral living. I got to be able to guide you and coach you. And once you can see some benefit and value, and invariably, when you do that, this is the most loyal customer on earth just because you did the right thing. And so I wish maybe it's a combination of maturity and experience, but I've been through all that. You know, the 10 to 15-year-old self, I've been through that. I hated my life. I know what that feels like. When my kids couldn't breathe and they're going to the hospital, I hated my life again because it's like, I'm doing this to them.
Yeah. One of the arches of life is that like, you're a kid and then you become a parent. You mentioned earlier that your father passed away before you really ever experienced or had any memories with him. How did he pass away, or how do you think that situation impacted both in your kind of adolescence, but then also when you became a father?
You know, I don't know about my adolescence. You know, I have nothing to compare it to. But as a father, like, you know what, I have an obligation to be here. I know ancestral living, these are the principles and philosophies that will enable me to be healthy, to do my job as a dad. I need to be here as a dad. It's one of the reasons that we do a 5-day water-only fast once a quarter. I hate doing that. Have you ever done it?
No. I one time didn't eat food for 24 hours. I thought I was a gangster. I was like, hell yeah. And then people were like, no, I did 5 days, whatever. I was like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah, well, every Wednesday and Sunday, I do a 24-hour water-only fast.
Whoa, hold on. Every Wednesday and Sunday, for 24 hours, you don't eat.
That's right.
So you only eat 5 days out of the week?
Well, if you think about it, on Tuesday, I had dinner. So then all I have to do is skip breakfast and lunch on Wednesday, resume dinner.
Got it.
Yeah, and so you end up having 24 hours.
It's like a busy day, basically.
It is.
Right? Yeah, you just forgot to eat.
But people are so used to just snacking and feeding nonstop that they think if they're going to skip a meal, and a lot of people call it, I skipped a meal and I'm fasting. I don't really call 24 hours fasting even, but this is a reason why that to me is effortless. But to do a 5-day water-only fast is not easy. And then I would say on day 2 or 3, you know, the Liver Queen and I, like, we'll go on a walk, we'll hold their hand, and we're like, oh my God, you feel like shit? Yeah, I feel like, oh God, why do we do this? You know why I do this? It's because I grew up without a dad. And I'll be damned if there's something I can do about it to be there for my guys.
What happens to your body when you go through the 5-day fast? Like, what's going on physiologically?
Physiologically, like the benefits, or
yeah. Like, what? Why do people say, "Hey, it's good for you to do" or whatever?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of apoptosis?
No. You sound like a Wikipedia entry right now.
No way. No way.
What is that?
So there's a few benefits, and I'll explain some of them. So there's apoptosis, autophagy, metabolic flexibility, something called mitochondrial biogenesis. Like apoptosis is when it's a natural process that we would go through. Our early ancestors with a feast and famine cycle. When you're not eating, apoptosis is a natural process where the cell a sick cell will self-destruct.
Okay.
And today we're always feeding ourselves. We don't have that natural process that should be ongoing, which can lead to cell mutations and chronic health issues. So apoptosis is a natural process that should be happening when we don't eat for a few days. So, and again, this was something naturally that would happen. Autophagy is like cellular house cleaning. It's like kind of the garbage in the cell, that should be cleaned out, which again doesn't happen very often unless we fast. Metabolic flexibility, you might know, is like if you're not eating for a while, then beta oxidation or living off of ketones and fat instead of being a sugar burner, like it allows you to be a lot more metabolically flexible. And then lastly, mitochondrial biogenesis is like, it's all about energy production, right? And you're not eating anything. And so now your body starts to say, oh my God, he's not eating anything. There's a whole lot of other things that are going on, like something called reverse thyroid goes through the roof. It starts to slow you down. And then you start to be able to produce more mitochondria to try and give you more energy. So I'll tell you what ends up happening after a 5-day fast. Like, again, the 5-day fast is horrible. I think there's a lot of incredible longevity benefits that happen, but almost immediately afterwards, the performance benefits are through the roof. Like your brain... you ever seen the movie Limitless?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never had that pill, but it's like that for a while, and so it feels so good. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this every quarter. Again, that week is hard, but after a couple of days of recovering, man, you feel incredible. So there's a lot of benefits. Even if you take the benefits out, I think what's most important, reason why we do it is modern day primitive cultures do it, not intentionally, because they're going on hunts and they're not getting the kill. Our early ancestors always had these feast and famine cycles. So it's to honor the struggle of our early ancestors, right? And it's to honor these 9 ancestral tenets that always enabled us for millions of years to express robust health. We stopped doing this.
You work out while you're doing it?
Not really. I mean, we'll go on long walks. But you try working out so on day 1, I do what's called a simulated failed hunt.
Okay.
And I think it's pretty natural to what our early ancestors would have gone through. You would have gone on a hunt. You would have failed it. You deplete any glycogen in your body. I think the metabolic flexibility benefits will come. I think all the benefits come on sooner if you can do the failed hunt. So on day 1.
What do you do for a failed hunt? You just go run around in the woods?
Kinda. Yeah. I mean, it's something kind of intense in a shorter time domain to simulate a failed hunt. Maybe it's just taking like a heavy D-ball, which is like maybe 100-pound ball or something, and doing a whole bunch of ball cleans over the shoulders for 10, 15 minutes, running around.
Physical exertion to get your energy up and sweat a little bit, and then basically say, hey, look, I did some physical activity, but I didn't get any food at the end of it. Right.
And then I would say day 2, 3, and 4, like you don't really have a whole lot. Like even if you wanted to, man, you could try and put yourself in the gym, and it's just not really working out. I might do a couple of push-ups here and there to try and get a little bit of energy. But then on day 5, when you're breaking the fast, I'll do a simulated successful hunt. And then I'll carry the carcass back. And again, I think that this is all evolutionarily consistent with what our early ancestors would have gone through. And it feels good, like if you think about it, early ancestors one day wouldn't have just woken up after 5 or 6 days of not eating and not had to put forth any effort, and then they get to eat. Like you would have had to put forth some effort.
Yeah, but you just pop in a Pop-Tart in the toaster oven. That shit is good as fuck. So easy.
I don't know. I don't know. Those guys tried to make me eat donuts the other day.
I saw Schultz had the donut. Did you eat any?
You know what? I call that the subprimal plate. And when I look at that plate, and I look at what I get to eat back home, the primal foods that I get, there's nothing more delicious than the primal foods that I get to eat. And we are spoiled. We have Liver King Chef Lionel that makes these incredible meals for us. Like, there's nothing you could put in front. Like, when I see that plate, I'm like, it looks really interesting, right? Like, the way that they try to make...
bright colors, the whole thing, right?
Sprinkles. I mean, the way that they're... all of it. I'm like, oh, they got you. And it's crazy that people are buying what they're selling. But you say Pop-Tart. I'm like, what the hell, Pop-Tart? But
so wait, you live in Texas, right?
Right.
All right. What I understood, there's a couple things in emails and a number of the messages. I watched a number of videos. This is probably more research than I've done for a conversation in a while, because I'm like, oh shit, I don't know anything about this. Let's go get educated. And I'm just going to throw out things that surprised me or were interesting to me as I kind of watched these. The first is that you live on a pretty big plot of land in Texas, and in one of the emails that you sent to, I guess it was a doctor, right, where you're asking for medical advice and help and coaching and all this stuff, you talked about everyone comes to you. You don't go to an office, or what is like the work setup that you've got going on, and are people just showing up to your house to like do work, or what?
Yeah, this is really interesting. You ask. I know we probably won't say exactly every phase. We covered the 10 to 15-year-old phase from 20 to 30. was the corporate phase.
Okay.
And I didn't
so you wore a suit and tie, went to like a corporate office.
Well, I wore a suit and tie for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then I wore scrubs for maybe like the next 5 years. And I didn't see my kids.
Yeah.
My wife didn't see our kids. And so she put her foot down and she goes, hey, listen, I'm done. We're both providing for the family. I'm not caretaking. I'm not nurturing them. I'm not nourishing them. I'm done as a professional. This is on you. And I'm like, well, actually, at the time, I wasn't like, thank God. Actually, at the time, I was like, trying to twist her. Hey, just a little longer. Just a little longer.
And you guys were making like decent money, or it was a struggle? What was it like 20 to 30?
Yeah. When we first met, I was making about $250,000. She was making about $250,000. When we met, we were making about $500,000 a year. And this was 20 years ago. So it was pretty decent money.
You're balling.
We did good.
What kind of car were you driving?
Oh God. I was driving a Range Rover, but this
you were fucking balling.
Let me tell you why it's funny. Come on. Let me tell you why.
That's the fastest way to figure out. Come on.
Let me tell you why this is funny. Because I had just met my wife snowboarding. She's living in New York. I'm in Houston, and I'm living in like this really big house.
All right.
It's like a 3-story house, widening. I mean, you name it.
By yourself?
Right? By myself. And I go pick her up from the airport. We had met snowboard. She goes back home. I go back home, and then she comes to visit me, and I'm thinking, if she comes to visit me, I'm going to pick her up in my Range Rover. I'm taking her back to my mansion. It's done. It's done, right? It's done. Anyways.
Fuck Ancestors. I got a goddamn modern cave over here.
So this is what I think. And then after a couple of weeks, things are going really, really well. And we get engaged really quickly. We get married, but she's got to move to Texas. I say, hey, what kind of car do you want? And she goes, a car? I don't know. I mean, I'll just take the same thing that you have. And I'm like, do you even know what I have? Do you know what that? And here's the thing, it didn't impress her at all because she had no idea. So she ends up having to get one too. She goes, I want what you have in blue. Okay, so what ends up happening after that?
So you had 2 Range Rovers, so you're definitely balling.
But yeah, well, we were doing good. We were doing good. But I would say then the evolutionary hunter entrepreneur side came out almost. Not too long after we got married.
And so this is the dentistry kind of, is it a network? Like what was this? Because it is fascinating to me that like you were doing pretty well by all measurements in corporate America and things like that. You all get together. She's a dentist. Yeah. And then you guys build a business. But one of the things that I've taken away, I've talked to a lot of different people. I'm very fortunate. I got a lot of friends that have built massive online followings, whether it's podcasts or emails or fucking social media, whatever. These people are not dumb, right? And it's easy to look and say, oh, look at this idiot. He's just taking photos. Look at this woman. She's just taking photos, whatever. But like these people understand stuff. And I think seeing that you had already built another business that had been quite successful is, a data point of like you guys understood how business works. And so walk us through just like what was that business and how exactly did it work?
Yeah. So she didn't want to work for anybody anymore. And I said, cool, because, like I know I'm pretty good at what I do. And the kind of commissions I was getting was such a tiny fraction of the sales. I'm like, hold on a second. I'm doing 30 million in sales and I'm getting this.
Yeah. What were you selling?
Medical devices.
Got it. Okay.
And so I said, hey, do you want to do this business? She's like, yeah, let's do the business. I want nothing to do with it. But I want my own practice. I'll be the dentist. You do the business stuff. So we bought this practice for about $500,000. And then I start figuring out, okay, so
cash?
No.
How did you structure the deal? You remember?
We just got a loan from a bank. It was like a 7-year. And here's the thing, like we had never had a note so big in our lives.
Yeah.
Like holy shit, we got to pay $7,000 a month, on this thing. We had never done anything like that before.
Gotta sell the Range Rover.
And everything was leveraged. We didn't know any different. I mean, everything. And what ends up happening is I'm like, okay, now we got to make money because now we got to pay that back. And so I started looking at the model of the business. And I just spent like a couple days there and I'm seeing they're referring all these patients out to the oral surgeon, the periodontist, the imaging center, the lab. And you sit there for a day. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we not doing all of this?
So somebody comes into the dentist. The dentist is essentially like the primary care of the mouth, if you will. And there's work that's being done there. People are paying or the insurance company's paying for it. But you're saying then, you need additional work. So you would refer it out. And in the legacy model, do you get a referral fee for that? No. So it's just like, hey, I'm sending you to my friend because they can do the oral surgery.
You might get a Christmas basket. You might get tickets to go watch a game.
Yeah.
This is what would happen. And so, you know who really suffered was the patient. Because the patient comes back and the radiographs aren't there or they're fucked up. Oh, hey, I'm really sorry. Got to go back to the imaging center. The crown or whatever product you get back from the dental lab, that's fucked up. Oh, didn't fit. Sorry, come back next week. Go back to the dental lab and all this stuff. And we're like, for continuity of care, and this makes sense, why don't we start bringing this all under one roof?
Got it.
And so we doubled. So that practice was doing about $400,000 or $500,000 a year when we bought it. We did 1.2 within the next year, and then 2.4 the next year, and then almost $5 million the year after that. I'm like, you know what? We're pretty good at this. You know,
and the growth that's happening there is you're growing like the primary care business, or you're bringing in these other components, and now it's all that revenues.
We vertically integrated the whole thing.
Got it.
Yeah, so now she has every specialist in dentistry working underneath her. We had an imaging center in our same building. We bought the real estate. We started a dental lab. And so not only are we benefiting from our own, we're referring to ourselves, but now we're getting other places to refer to us.
Got it.
As well. And so that started to kick ass.
What was it called? Like Ancestry Dentistry?
Oh, I wish. I wish. If I had the opportunity right now to rename it, it would have been called Strong Jaw.
Strong Jaw.
and that actually is a company that we're launching in the near future.
What's fascinating, though, is I actually didn't know this. I was reading a book. James Nestor wrote a book called Breath or Breathe. I think it is. And, somebody recommended it to me, and I knew it was going to be a good book because literally I was here. Somebody was on the podcast. I had the book. We got in the elevator, and he was like, that book was stupid. It wasn't very helpful to me. Like, it's, just breathe, right? And when we got in the elevator, there's a dude who saw the book, and he was like, I was literally just doing breathing exercises, the most amazing book. When I was like, all right, I got to read this thing. And in the book, they talk about how actually savages have better teeth than the civilized populations. And their whole thing was, soft foods, like all these things I'm sure that you've talked about. And it just blew my mind. That like literally the civilized people were actually fucked up more than just people who live naturally.
You go see modern day primitive culture tribes, their oral health, their dental health is almost flawless. And this is the thing. We believe we're sold this bill of goods. If you brush and floss, this is the oral hygiene hypothesis. If you brush and floss, you're not going to get cavities. Well, our early ancestors didn't brush, didn't floss, and they don't get cavities. Modern day primitive culture tribes, we've been to the Amazon, Africa, and Mongolia. We've seen 6 or 7 different tribes. They don't brush, they don't floss, they don't get cavities. It comes down really to about 2 or 3 things. One is the nutrition, right? So this is why liver is king, right? You need the fat-soluble system, vitamin A, D, K, and some E. So you need to have that fat-soluble system, but you also need to have the mechanical loading. So if we're eating baby food, we're eating the mushy stuff, and you don't have the mechanical loading, you can't just have one without the other. There's some other stuff going on there. Listen, I'm not saying don't brush your teeth. If you want fresh breath, go brush your teeth. But this isn't really fixing the root cause. And so I think over time that this is really what she got fed up about. She's like, I'm not addressing the root cause. I'm just fixing,
it's all Band-Aid solutions.
And she starts talking to them about nutrition. Weston A. Price wrote this book, Nutrition, Physical Degeneration, all about this stuff. It's really well documented. And she starts talking to him about, hey, let's get you eating liver. Let's get you having some bone marrow, some egg yolk, some midday sun. And the patients are like, just fix my teeth. Just fix my teeth. And then as she starts to say, hey, listen, I'm done doing all this. She's frustrated. She needs to go be a mom. I start thinking, well, how do we get this kind of nourishment? How do we address the root cause? And so that's kind of when a supplement idea came up to me. And I thought, man, this is way bigger than this. Like, look at how we addressed our kids' root cause. There's so much more good we can do spreading this message. So I think we did a pretty kick-ass job in dentistry. We at the end of it, we own a $6 million building. She sold the practice, which was about a $5 million sale for the practice. So we did a decent job. We struggled a lot through those years. We couldn't make payroll. A lot through those years, because we overbought the real estate. But guess what? At the end of it, we own the real estate.
Yeah, explain overbuying real estate. What exactly that meant?
Yeah. She saw this building at this intersection, this really fancy intersection. I don't know if anybody knows Houston. It's called River Oaks. It's like the most affluent neighborhood in Houston. And one day she's like, hey, I want to buy that building. And I'm like, okay, let's go see how much it costs. And I think we had like a $300,000 or $400,000 budget. Well, the building was $3 million. Then it's a couple more million to build out. And so the bank was dumb enough to loan us the money to buy it. And the covenants of the loan were like, well, I got to keep my job because I was doing pretty good. But then we couldn't afford the note anymore. Payroll wasn't working out. And so I had to quit the corporate job to come figure that out. And I mean, everything was being repossessed, man, everything.
Really?
Oh, the banks are calling. And I'm like, I tell the front, I can't talk to them on the phone. I got to go make money. You know, if they want to come visit, they got to come here. I'm in crisis mode, right? And I'm so glad we went through this too, because we figured that out too. You know, if you figure out enough things like that, you have enough rites of passage. I think this is what ends up like really building a high courage. Oh man, we could do anything. So it wasn't smooth sailing. But that's what I mean by we overbought the real estate. We couldn't afford it. We figured out a way to barely make payroll several times. I mean, several times we just had to get cash advances on the credit cards. Right? But after all the cash advances were done on the credit card to make payroll, you know, then there's something called care credit. We would do that. We would find some way to sell something, to get something for payroll. You know, and meanwhile, I thought, oh God, we're losers. Like, and my confidence was really rocked. You know, I thought, oh, we could do a lot of stuff. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I can't do anything. And then at the end of it, you're looking like, you know what, we still got this building. And now what the building is generating for passive income for the rentals we have is pretty like, oh, we did that. This is what we walked away with.
Still own it today?
We still own it today.
So you sell the practice. Is that the first time that you guys put like material money in your bank account?
Well, it's really funny because of all the debts that we had. You know, like we ended up paying off our debts. So we were down to one car and a rental house.
Really?
we went from the Range Rovers, the big house, all this stuff, down to a rental house, and we shared one old white beat up Chevrolet. Yeah. We didn't really have money to put in the bank.
And so when you do that, why jump back in to start another business? Why not go back and say, you know what, I was pretty good at doing the medical sales.
Yeah, I thought about that. Yeah. Oh, trust me. I was talking to everybody. Hey, man, you think I should come back? Because I knew that was easy, you know, and I know that you know this. Like, usually the easiest thing is probably not the best. But then I thought, man, I'm an evolutionary hunter. Like, if I were going to design my next business, what I would make sure is I don't make the same mistakes. I had a brick and mortar, right, that was open from like 7 to 7, one location, one little spot. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure this thing out. What's my real why in the world? My kids weren't healthy. We figured out how to get them healthy. How would I like to sell this, right? I would like to sell it 24/7, 365 across all continents in 55 countries, right? It's always available. And so I started to write this stuff down. I'm like, okay, you know what? This is actually my why in the world, you know, and I know how to do this. And so I said I know how. I believed we could do it.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting. I tried to hire consultants. Hey, how do you start this kind of business? Nobody would help me, you know? And so it's just one fucking step at a time, you know? And it's wild what you could do after 5 or 6 steps. And then eventually, you know, we have one product.
How much of the beginning is like you sitting down? There's a story, Scott Adams got a book, and he talks about the 2 different political campaigns in 2016, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And the way that he positions it in the book is he says that Hillary Clinton was very much, you know, the political machine. And they do all their testing of all the different mottos and messages and all this stuff. And they do their focus groups and they get it back. And they end up coming up with the slogan, I think it was Stronger Together, right? And the way that it describes in the book is one day Trump walks into a room and they're like, hey, we need a motto. And he like thinks for a second. He's like, make America great again. Right.
I'll tell you right now, that's me, because my motto is fire, 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 aim. Fire, 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 we'll aim. Right. Like, my motto is take fucking massive action at whatever you do. Make all the mistakes, because I make all the mistakes, man. But I course correct along the way. And at the end of this, the trajectory, where you end up, I can't tell you how many brilliant people I know that are still talking about this business idea, right? They're still way back here, way smarter, all the financial backing in the world. And they're like still at like step 2 or 3. Yeah. You know, so I'm definitely the latter when it comes to that.
And I also think it's like a intuition thing, right? Like, some people have intuition. Other people may have intuition. They don't trust their intuition. And so they do the testing or whatever. And there's arguments for both. I don't think either one's like right or wrong. I think it's just you got to know who you are. So you guys start the business. Do you raise capital for it? Do you just like figure out some way to get a website up? Like, what do you do?
You know, with the sale of the practice, we were able to pay off debts pretty much. I was able to clear some credit cards. I was able to use $7,000 on a credit card to place a PO. I learned how to, this is before the Shopify stuff. So I learned some coding. I learned to make a website. I built it all in the kitchen, in our kitchen. I'm making the website. I'm taking the pictures. It's just me. You know, now I'm handling all the emails, and I didn't raise any capital. I put $7,000 on the credit card. You know, as soon as we started to make some money, and I started thinking, oh my God, like this is actually going to work. You
So
know,
it's pretty much profitable from day one because it had to be, it sounds like.
not really, because then we're just living off credit cards because it actually did so well that now I've got to place a bigger PO. And a bigger PO and a bigger PO. And then, you know what, I can't do this by myself anymore. And so I ended up hiring a guy for next to nothing. And I remember the resentment. I'm paying you this money, next to nothing. It's hardly any money. And I'm not making any money yet. And so, you know, that's what happens, you know, a lot of times in business, at the beginning of business, is you get paid last, you know, dead last. So that happened, I would say probably took about maybe a year and a half, you know, to really start to see the profits coming from it.
And while you're doing this, you're still into working out, kind of lifting weights, doing all this stuff?
Oh, yeah. I've always been obsessed with that. Here's the thing. I didn't leave my house for years. I mean, like, my kid wanted some, like, workout bar from downtown. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You want a workout bar. But I can't drive you because all I'm doing is this. You know, from 5 a.m. to, like, midnight. This is all I'm doing. You know, customer emails are coming in, people that are sharing their health crisis, and I know I have to be there for them, right? And so it's like 20, and not only am I handling all of these emails to take care of the customer, but then I'm doing the packaging, and then I'm driving to the post office, you know, because it's time for me to go to the post office. It's wild. I mean, this is what I did. And
people don't realize that this structure, this mechanism, is like pretty much all these Amazon sellers. There are hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever, in the United States, and also globally, but in the United States, where these small businesses basically exist online, and this is the daily routine of people.
Yeah.
They basically get orders, they respond with the customer, they do whatever with their widget that they're selling, and then they either leave it outside for you know, Amazon or the post office or whatever, or they drive there. And if you go and you stand in a post office in like pretty much any town in America, you will see the small business owners that are selling stuff online come in, drop the stuff off, and do it every day, day after day after day.
So to answer your question related to working out, I mean, if I had customer emails, there's no way I could go work out, but I had to work out. So I would do whatever I needed to do. And I would say, okay, if I can get caught up to this amount and there's only 1 or 2 emails, I'm going to go in there as fast as I can and go get a workout. And then I would get a couple of mini workouts in doing that. So I was still able to do that.
And how big are you at that point? Like, how much do you weigh, you think?
175.
175 pounds. All right. And so as the business starts to grow, this is, I'm assuming we're getting now into like the late 2010s or so, kind of 2018, 2019, somewhere in that range.
Right.
You at some point are like, I want to grow the business, so like let me create Liver King, or like how does that idea kind of come into your mind before you even do anything?
So I already had a couple of businesses.
Okay, so now you got multiple businesses.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if you've heard this, but the why has been because of my kids, right? And then you realize how desperately people are hurting. And so you've probably heard these statistics, but I just want to say it one more time. 85% of the population struggles with self-esteem issues. 80% struggle paycheck to paycheck. And you got to figure out, why is that? Why do we spend more money than we make, right? And a lot of times it's because we're trying to express our worth and value with shit that we buy on a credit card, right? Instead of going in here and expressing our worth and value. 70% of the population are overweight, half are obese, 50% on prescription medicine, 40% have or will get cancer, and 20% want to have kids and can't have kids. So, and I'm getting all these emails in, and I see how desperately they're hurting and how they hate their lives. And I'm seeing this simple solution, ancestral living, these 9 ancestral tenets: sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, and bond. Somebody comes to us with a neurocognitive issue, and they're asking for a product suggestion. I'm like, a product suggestion? You know, have you ever heard of ketosis, right? Have you ever heard of egg yolks? Have you ever heard of getting the sun? Have you ever heard of these ancestral tenets? Here's what we need to be talking about. And if we can start to ratchet up some health improvements there, then let's start talking about some of the nose to tail stuff that you could be doing. And it's so funny because I can't tell you, almost every time they're like, well, hold on a second, do you sell sunshine? Are you selling egg yolks? You know what we're doing is we're selling a path to a better life. And when you see that work so successfully in a business, like, you know what, I got to do more of this. And so I opened up more businesses, and the goal is to open up businesses that sell ancestral living in every category of business. And so when I talk about Strong Jaw, This is the category. It's the dental category. We have a canine category coming up. We have a gut category coming up, a neurocognitive. If I'm going to get this message out, this is one of the hows. So you know the why. This is one of the hows that we're going to do it.
How many businesses you got today?
About 10.
10. And how many do you think that you can get to?
We're going to get to 100.
You think you're going to have 100 businesses?
We're going to get to 100 in every different category. This message is going to go mainstream. And people still go to the dentist every single day thinking that they're going to brush and floss, and they have recurrent decay. And they can't figure out, why do I have recurrent decay? And guess what? They have much more deep health issues. This is a sign of what's really going on in the rest of the body. This is not okay. We're going to have to change this paradigm. We have to change the paradigm. You know, it's not how you brush and floss your teeth. This is how we're going to have to educate, and it's all 9 ancestral tenets, and we're predominantly going to meet people here in this category, and that's going to go in every respective category. So I just want to be really clear. The vision has never changed. We have to acknowledge that people are hurting at record rates. There's a better, simple solution to go forward, and so businesses are kicking ass.
You went 10 for 10, or did you have businesses that you tried and they failed and then you moved on to the next one?
We're 10 for 10.
10 for 10.
Doing this.
Okay, and what's the craziest one that maybe people wouldn't know about?
Well, I don't even know how would you define crazy? What do you mean?
What's the one that you're like, oh, people have no clue that this is even a business that we have?
Probably most of them don't know.
Most of them?
Here's
the
thing.
Let's just go through them. What's the first one? The first one is the
if it's okay with you, I don't want to promote any of my businesses. If anybody really wants to know, you could go look it up online. But this is getting to your question. The whole Liver King. When did Liver King come in here?
Yep.
Liver King came in because I can't tell you how many people come to our house. And they're like, holy shit, like, you guys live this way? And we're like, well, of course we live this way. Like, how do you live? And time after time, people will be like, dude, you got to go on social media. You know, time after time, people are like, they got to make a documentary about you guys. The way that you do all 9 of these ancestral tenets, like, you guys are out of a movie. And so the vision is to raise awareness. People are hurting. Here's the data, right? And here's the solution forward. And I'm like, how do I do a better job at that? And
the way that you live, I think this is the first time I ever saw a piece of content from you, was there was a tour of your house. I thought you were fucking crazy, man. Right? I'll straight up tell you that. I think you basically start and immediately you're talking about Faraday bags, grounded house. At one point you talked about like the Ethernet cords are like unplugged from all the devices. So just like, why is the structure of the home? Forget the workouts, the food, all that, but just like the home itself, what is like the general idea? You're trying to protect like radio waves, the electronics?
Ancestral tenet 4 is shield, right? And our early ancestors had to shield from lions and neighboring tribes, and the illusion of danger is kind of gone. Like, oh, we're safe. But we're really bombarded with so many horrific things. You had a guest on recently that was talking about plastics and phytates and how that affects hormone. Those are all hormone disruptors. Those are all around us, right? But a lot of those things that you can see, and there's a lot of data on those things. We're swimming in an experiment, non-native EMF. So you come in our house, and we don't want you to bring your cell phone in our house. But if you're going to bring your cell phone in our house, it goes in a Faraday container.
What happens? So I take my cell phone, I put it in that bag. What's that bag doing that's beneficial?
Yeah, it's blocking any input or output from the phone.
So basically, the phone's dead. I can't use it for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that's right. Same thing with Wi-Fi. You know, people are like, well, how are you going to do your thing, do your businesses?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Ethernet? You know how many people have never heard of an Ethernet connection? They're faster, they're more secure. You know, I'm like,
so you have no Wi-Fi in the house?
We don't have any Wi-Fi in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, like all this is, there's some data on voltage-gated calcium channels and how that affects cells, and cells can't cell signal to each other to express their default functions. There's some data on that, but I would say, listen, let's pretend there's not. We're doing an experiment. We've never had non-native EMFs the way we do now.
What is a non-native EMF?
So there's natural EMFs that come from the sun, that come from solar flares. There's EMF pulses that just happen naturally on Earth. But now everyone in here with a phone they're running an experiment. And look at how many there are. And normally now, like in office buildings and apartments and all this stuff, everybody has Wi-Fi. There's modems everywhere, you know, and EMF sensitive people can even tell you, here's what I feel from this. And so we built our house as a sanctuary. Like, this is where we're going to heal, rest, recover, do our best work. I think the sleep environment absolutely needs to be pristine. Most people won't argue about the sleep environment. So we make sure the sleep environment is perfect, and this is how we've built our house. And it's funny you said these things because, once again, when you live this way, if you were to say, hey, man, describe your house, I wouldn't describe any of that. This is just how we live. So when you're saying this, like, it kind of reminds me how neurotic and obsessive we are. And I'm like, our kids are in here. Our kids are developing. You know, it's my obligation to make sure that they have the best shot they can be.
You have a flip phone or you got a smartphone?
Yeah, I got a regular phone.
You got a phone? You carry it around or
No.
Okay, what do you do with it?
Well, so like right now? So right now it's
just
in the car.
just in an average day, are you carrying your phone around in your pocket? What are you doing to increase the odds that you're living a more healthy kind of ancestral life,
first thing,
but still have access to the phone?
So we have a regular phone at the house. So you want to call me, like there's a landline. You call me on my landline. I just started cracking up because Derek shared my email with the world, getting hundreds of emails from people, and people found my phone number too. They're calling that too. But my phone is on airplane mode. I would say 99% of the time it's on airplane mode. So it's like, is this a phone or is it a Swiss Army knife? And I really use it as a camera. And so I'll record when I need to record from it. I'll take it out of airplane mode, maybe, or I might leave it in airplane mode and just plug in the Ethernet with an adapter and do what I need to do to upload to social. So I don't talk on my phone, like my cell phone.
You don't talk on your really?
Every once in a while, I shouldn't say never. Every once in a while, I'll have a phone conversation, but the phone conversation should happen on the landline. If that doesn't happen, we're out and about, I'll do a speakerphone and I'll talk for a minute. But if you're asking, like, where's my phone? My phone's not in my pocket. My phone's, like, usually, I call them my places, right? Like, it's usually in my office, or it's in the gym, or it's another, place. And so I have a couple of different phones. I just leave there. Like, if I need my phone to go record, which is really my camera, that's what I go and get. Yeah,
it's fascinating. And then you mentioned sleep. What do you do from like a sleep hygiene or sleep routine? What does that process look like that you've now found works for you?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because this kind of ties in. Everyone's going to, like, most people are like, hey, dude, you're so crazy. I'm not going to do any of that.
Yeah.
And we know that most people won't do that. So what are some things that they can do, And so from a sleep hygiene standpoint, the best way to set up your sleep is by getting early morning sun through the eyes, on the face, on the skin. First thing in the morning. We need to get this exposure, even when it's overcast outside. And 2 minutes is better than none. 5 minutes is better than 2. I always say, if you can aim for 5 to 10, do that. And so first thing you should do.
Like literally, you get up, you go pee, and then go outside, or you go right outside?
I go outside.
Okay.
I take a piss on my favorite tree.
Outside, all right.
I get the sun on me. I have my bare feet connected to the ground, and I'm making a video at the same time.
So you're sunning your balls in the morning, too?
No.
I mean, if you got your thing out, right?
Technically, if I'm taking a piss.
That's what I'm saying.
I wanted to push back on that because
Liver King suns his balls at 9 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning.
Somebody made a video about this, calling it a tenant to sun your balls in your ass. And I'm like, well, hold on. Where did you get that for? I'm like, hey, guy, whoever said that, I'm like, that might be your tenant. Yeah. Let that be your tenant. But, like, I just want to make it really clear. This guy has never gone on record saying to do that. But technically, our early ancestors would have had some exposure when they were taking a piss. And
but you go outside, you get the sun early in the morning.
That's right.
Key piece. Okay.
That's right. So I get that part done. So in terms of sleep, get early morning sun through the eyes, on the face, on the skin, right? You want to finish your last meal 3 to 4 hours before bed. And then it's really important to take in the sunset as the final environmental cue that the day is winding down. This is really important. And you don't want to come back in the house to all the artificial lights. Either you can have those lights off and just have firelight in the house, which I know isn't really practical for people, or you can put on these UVX glasses that will block a lot of those lights. And so there's 20. If you want to know all 20 things, you should go to liverking.com. There's a 9 Ancestral Tenets ebook. It's free. There's a lot, but those are the 3 or 4 main things that will do.
But like, you sleep, I think in the video, you sleep on like a wood
plank bed.
What is that?
Yeah, well, today, like, what is it that people sleep on today?
Yeah.
When you go visit with modern day primitive culture tribes, there's look at beds today. They're the perfect height. You just barely fall into it, and you wonder why people keep hitting snooze. They're so comfortable. Like, they just stay in there. It's like a cast. They have these metal springs that can also conduct ambient electricity. You need to be in this deep parasympathetic state. Again, even if you take this out of the equation, most mattresses are off-gassing. And you can get a non-toxic, a non-off-gassing mattress. But if you look at modern day primitive cultures, they don't have these beds at this height. They're on the ground. And you have 70, 80-year-olds that can do full squats, get up and down from the ground without using their hands. If you continue to use that kind of mobility, you won't lose that kind of mobility. And that mobility also confers balance and agility benefits, so you don't break a hip. Because you know what happens when you break a hip, man? Like, you're almost done. All the comorbidities that happen when you break a hip. These modern-day primitive culture tribes are kicking our ass in life. And so this is one of the things that we've learned from them that we took back home. My wife wanted just to sleep directly on the floor. and with no padding, nothing. And I'm like, hold on a second, it doesn't seem very evolutionarily consistent. Wouldn't we have some plant material, maybe some dirt, maybe something? And she's hardcore, you know? And so after a year or two of trying that, like I got bone bruises that aren't getting any better. She's like, I love it. I love doing this, you know, like, not me. And so we got about maybe that much cushion that simulates some plant material. So that's why we sleep on the wooden plank bed, is because it elevates it a little bit. Because of the humidity, there's no mold or moisture that creates any massive issues. So that's a big deal. And like I said, there's like 20 things. If you read the Ancestral Tenants ebook, which is free, you'll see all of them. I think the big things are that most people don't, because again, people aren't going to go do that. Almost no one's going to go and do that. Get early morning sun. Finish your last meal 3 or 4 hours before bed. Take in the sunset as a final environmental cue, and then block the blue lights, hopefully with the UVX glasses.
Got it. So you've been living this life, right? And it works for you. It works for your family. There's some people who are like, yep, I agree with everything he just said, and I'm trying to do all of that shit. I got a Faraday bag. I got the glasses. I'm eating liver, whatever. There's other people who are like, bro, shut the fuck up. I'm eating McDonald's, and like, good luck, right? And everyone in between. But what I find fascinating about your story is all the information that's now come out is you basically called your shot on the Liver King thing, right? So I saw some of the emails Derek from More Plates, More Dates published, and I listened to one of the interviews he did with Chris Williamson over at Modern Wisdom. And one of the things in one of the emails is basically like, I'm going to get 1 million followers, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I was like, you know, the crazy part is not that he wrote the shit, that he went and did it. And so forget for a second the steroids and kind of all the controversy and stuff. Talk about the invention of Liver King, right? Because I think that what many people don't understand about the internet is that most of the shit you see on the internet is not real life. Like I always say, Twitter's not real life, right? It's like, yeah, you might be using your real name, you might be using your real photo. You may think you don't have, another, character or anything that you're using on the internet. But come on, if I talk to you in person at dinner and then I see what you're tweeting, you're a different person on the internet. You drew a line in the sand and you were like, there's me and there's Liver King to some degree. And so like, what was the idea or the strategy behind
I would say most
that?
of that is to a degree. You know, earlier you said about the email, how do I bring everything to me? You know, I'm really good at focusing. And if you don't have to drive in your car or go anywhere or deal with any bullshit conversations, it's like, you know how much more productive you can be. When you know what your roles and goals are, you can say, I'm going to have 1 million followers by March 2nd. And this is not even a full year. You know, I'm like, I know I can do that. And this, I remember the guys I'm talking to, everyone's laughing. They had to hold their laugh back. They were almost embarrassed. They're laughing in my face. I'm like, listen, I know this is an unreasonable goal. It will take unreasonable things for us to get there, but I know we can do this. I believe in it. And what I need for you to do is not laugh at it, just to say, hey man, if you're willing to do anything and everything it takes to get here, we can do that. And so this is why if I need to meet with an accountant, I don't go to the accountant. The accountant comes to me. Same thing with a lawyer, same thing with any meeting that I have, that they all come to me so that I can stay focused on my main roles and goals as a husband, as a father, as a primary role to express my highest, most dominant form as a man, as a CEO of the Ancestral lifestyle. And so whenever all this happened, I'm like, okay, this is the goal. And there wasn't really this line in the sand per se. What I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to call it passive income. You guys are going to record most of what I do. I sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, and bond this way every day. So I'm going to do this. What you guys are going to do is keep up with me and record this. Now, is it all 100% like that? I would say there's no doubt there are days where I feel like shit. And I wake up and I say, good morning, primals. It's prime time to do this. I'm like, fuck, I feel like shit. You know, really what I need to do is take a cold shower. You know, I think yesterday or today, this is what my good morning primal was like. I don't really feel very good, you know, and I'm doing more of that right now. But I would say, sure, there's some elements to Liver King, the character. But the thing is, most of what we do is really my truest, primal, authentic self on there.
One of the guys on our team always says like everything's the WWE. Right, of just like wrestling is such a good comparison to the rest of the world because everyone is putting on their face, they're putting on the act, they're doing all of this, and there's positives and negatives to it. Obviously, creating the Liver King character has led to a bunch of positives. You've talked about this ad nauseum, and I think that it's not just around eating certain things or working out or whatever. There's mental health benefits, like all of that. But there's also this danger of audience capture where all of a sudden, and I've even had it happen to myself, where you're like, the audience expects me to do X. If I deviate from X, they're gonna come for me.
Yeah.
They're gonna expose me. They're gonna do this. They're gonna piss me off. You know, whatever the thing is. Have you had that? Like, was it something that you realized, like, oh shit, like I have been captured by the audience to some degree, or is it something that like maybe now you're realizing?
With steroids or something else?
Just in general. Not even
I'll say in general again, like this is the relieving thing. It's like if I'm gonna go on social media, you guys are gonna record what I do. This is how I eat. This is how I live. You know, like people are especially right now saying Liver King's a character. This is how we live our life. And you know what's crazy? This is how Liver Queen lives her life too. We're all eating raw liver and raw testicle and raw bone marrow every single day. You know, and all of it's revealed in the stories. I couldn't imagine how exhausting it would be I would probably make 5, 6, 7, 8 stories a day. My good morning primals, what I eat, how I work out, the Liver King philosophy, going on a walk. I mean, there's so many things that are in here like, oh my God, what if I don't know how exhausting that would be if a WWE character had to do that and how sustainable and scalable. So I'm like, I've never really been worried about getting caught.
Yeah.
Other than what's just happened. But in terms of expressing my primal true form, this is what, you know, the reason why I came up with the name Liver King wasn't really just to like capture this larger than life character. It's I got to get this message across that liver is king. If you don't take anything else from this podcast, or when you meet this guy, it's like, oh, he's talking all this nonsense. Just remember one thing. If you're going to just do one thing, overlay on top of you don't have to change your life. Just start eating liver. And when people start eating liver, they feel the difference. And so this is the message I wanted to get across. And normally I say, Liver King here. Here's what Liver King's having for dinner. Liver King out. And I've said it 3 times, and somewhere in there I always say, because liver is king. And now when I meet people all over the place, like, hey, Liver King, let's do this thing. And I'm like, hold on. Why is my name Liver King? Let's talk about that. Do you know why? And impressively, a lot of people know why. I'm like, thank God. And then I say, are you eating it? Well, most of the time they're not. Like, well, if all I'm doing is entertaining you, then I'm failing you. You have to be eating it. And then I go home and I figure out, how do I get people to connect more deeply with this message so that it can change and impact their life? I know I've said a lot there, but I would say that I never really drew a line in the sense that, okay, here's Brian Johnson and here's Liver King. It really has been like, okay, we're going to record the way that I live my life. I do these crazy workouts. I eat these crazy things. I sleep this way. We live this way. And so the nice thing is it really hasn't been exhausting.
Could you have gotten as big on social media if you did under Brian Johnson?
The name?
Yeah. Or do you think the branding, the character, right, even though it is a reflection of what you do every day, was important to get the social following? You
know, so before social following, I had a beard. Before social following, I didn't wear a shirt. You know, before social following, like I looked, spoke, talked like this guy. You know, and so
you scared of shirts?
Well, you know what? I'm scared of not getting sun, you know, and also I think it is important to know, you know, again, like before social, I didn't wear a shirt. So now I'm going on social and I'm wearing a shirt. Now, actually, I'm playing a character, you know, so I didn't feel comfortable trying to play a character. You know, again, it's like, okay, so now we're recording. Hold on, guys. Let me put my shirt on. You know, it's like, I'm going to go do this stuff. You guys just record it, you know, and half the time, where's Thomas? Thomas is like, hey, I didn't get that. I'm like, he says, can we do it again? I said, no, you got to keep up with me.
You don't do second takes?
I sometimes I will, but
yeah.
You know what? You might call it roid rage. You know, like I've never had patience. I always say in life, you get what you tolerate, you get what you demand. I demand the most of myself, so I demand the most of the people around me. I don't have a lot of patience. You better keep up with me. And so imagine if I started to say, oh, hold on, you're recording? Let me go put a shirt on. How different would it be if I called myself Brian Johnson, didn't have a beard, and I don't know, look like everybody else? Probably pretty significantly.
Pretty different, yeah.
You know, but then I also think about how effortless it is that I get my message across. The name is Liver King because liver is king. That's if I can do that, you know, I don't know if you listened to the Joe Rogan one with Derek, but in that message, Joe Rogan said how great liver is and that he eats it all the time. Derek said that he eats it every day. All I heard was liver is king. That's all I heard. And I'm like, you know how great this is.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has an issue with the ancestral living, with liver is king, like all those things. I think actually most people are like, no, he's 100% right on that stuff. It's like 95% of the message, people are like, yep, and we need more people doing that. And whether it's you, whether it's Huberman, whether it's, you know, Rogan, whoever is like pushing this message forward is 100% what more people need to hear about. We've even had people come on. There's this one guy, Texas Slim. I don't know if you've come across him yet, but he talks talks all about like how corrupted the food supply system is, and cattle ranchers are basically, the big cattle companies basically got them by the balls, right? And they're making them do things they don't want to do and all this stuff, and it's just economics at play. So I don't think any people have a problem with that. The steroid thing, obviously, people got a problem with, but I'm going to do my best to unpack what I think is a nuance here, but I need to caveat with, I don't fucking know anything about this shit. So you're going to have to give me a little bit of an education. But when people hear steroids, what I think they think of is Arnold Schwarzenegger. They think of like, you bought steroids in like a back alley, you're jabbing it in your ass, and like, let's see what happens. That is like maybe one extreme. We'll call it like the back alley steroid use. Then there is what I think has become socially more understood, acceptable, and maybe talked about, which is like this hormone therapy stuff where people are like, yo, testosterone's down a shit ton over the last couple of decades. Why is that happening, and what can men do about it? And so that's maybe like the other end of the extreme. If you had to explain to people that don't understand a lot about steroids or hormones or whatever, like where are you on that spectrum in terms of what you've been doing? Is it just the hormone stuff? Is it somewhere in between? Like how would you think of that spectrum?
Yeah. There's been times where it's been in between.
Okay.
And when I tried it in between, this is why I reached out to Derek and that coaching guy, because I needed help because my blood chemistries got fucked up, because my lipids got high, my liver enzymes got high. And I did have a clinician monitoring me the whole time. And so, but my clinician, I felt like wasn't as valuable. So I'm like, okay, let me get a second opinion. Let me get a third opinion. Let me figure this out. We came off of some of those other things, which were the Winstrol and the Nandrolone, and stayed on testosterone and growth hormone. And then everything looked pretty good. And so technically, I had somebody tell me the other day, hey man, don't tell people that you're on steroids, because what you're on is TRT and growth hormone. You're on HRT, you're on hormone. And I said, listen, do you know how I haven't been forthcoming. I haven't been honest. So what I need to do now is overshare. I've been on steroids. I'm on steroids now. Technically, testosterone is a steroid. Growth hormone is not a steroid. It's a peptide hormone. For all intents and purposes, like these are PEDs, right? These are things that help us in the gym, help us to recover, help to build muscle, help to lose fat. Like there's no doubt that these things, help with that.
So we draw the kind of line in the sand of like, the TRT, the growth hormone, that is more like hormone therapy type stuff that I think people are talking about. Many of the folks who have been talking about you take it, they openly share, pros, cons, why they do it, whatever.
It's important to say that's HRT if it's managed in the normal
HRT,
range.
For this, I don't know.
Hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
If you're above the normal if it's super physiological, well, I think now you're talking like bodybuilder levels or something like that.
And so this is like Winstrol and all these other things. What is the difference of the impact on the body, right? So you said when you took some of the other stuff outside of just the hormone replacement therapy that you started to get fucked up, basically.
Yeah.
Like, why do people take it, and what is the intended outcome when they put that in their body?
Yeah. I don't know why. I can't speak for other people. I'll just say for me, I have to get into the gym multiple times a day. And it's at least 2 times a day. Sometimes it's more times a day. And this isn't like just doing regular workouts. I mean, even when I show on my stories, it's like I only show 3 or 4 things that I do. I probably do 6, 7, 8 things, Like I got to take myself to this point where I know I'm crushing myself, where I'm destroying myself. And it's like, okay, that makes me feel good enough for a while until I have to do it again. And I have to do that at least twice a day for me to look at myself in the mirror. Like before I go to bed, I sleep good. By the way, I sleep good. And I do have self-worth, but that's what's required of me to have self-worth. And if I leave out one of those, I don't.
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 44.
So 44, and I'm assuming that like most men, at some point in your 30s, you started to feel like, hey, I can't do the same amount of volume of workouts and intensity that you previously were doing. Is that something that you think hormone replacement therapy, most men in America are going to experiment with and like can get back to how they want to?
You know what I hope more than anything is that the first thing they look at are the 9 ancestral tenets. These things that our early ancestors have done since the beginning of time. 50 years ago, we had almost 50% higher testosterone. It's really clear things are happening today in the modern world. And if you look at modern day primitive culture tribes that are kicking ass, their neurochemistry is pretty good. I don't know if their hormones have been measured. But, you know, the low hanging fruit here really is sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, and but now there's work that has to go into that. There's no doubt about that. My hope and goal, like, is people have said, hey, so you can be an advocate for it now? And I would say, this is nuanced. You know, for a young person, hell no. You know, there's no place, there's no form of it unless you have hypogonadism unless there's like a physiological impairment for you to produce adequate testosterone. There's no place for it if you're a young person. Now, I think if you're, I don't know, in your mid-30s and you know about some of these natural levers like the 9 ancestral tenets and you're doing this stuff, give yourself that shot. Now, if you're doing this stuff and you still have low testosterone, if you feel like shit, if you look like shit, if you function like shit, go talk to someone who knows their shit and have that conversation and decide for themselves. There's no doubt that our I mean, you probably know some of the statistics, right? A lot of it has to do with xenoestrogens and phytoestrogens. And if you just shield properly and get your estrogen exposure down, you know what a difference that makes. If you start sleeping, all of these things make such a big impact on our hormones and our neurochemistry. And sleep is probably the biggest lever. You start getting early morning sun. You finish your last meal early. You take in the sunset. You block out all these blue lights instead of looking at your phone right before bed. And you can do that if you have your UVX glasses on. If you just fix your sleep, your testosterone will go up a ton. Your growth hormone will go up a ton. You know, I do think that as we get older, we're not meant to still be in this warrior archetype where we're working out 2 or 3 times a day. You know, there's something I'm dealing with internally that I never really faced before, not until all of this came out, right? And then I said, well, you know what? I got to do this every day. I got to get into the gym. When I'm on vacation, I got to get into the gym. Yesterday, we had a really busy day. I crushed myself in the morning, and then we ordered dinner. I'm like, oh, well, guess what? I got to go do this thing again before we go and eat. This is, again, what I have to do. And then somebody said, well, why do you have to do that? And I know I'm dealing with this. You know, I think it probably harkens back to my 10 to 15-year-old self. I think it harkens back to like when I figured out that I was strong, and I doubled down on that. And it's like, okay, before that I felt worthless. And then I figured out, man, if I can do that, I think I'm capable of anything. And so this is what is required of me to feel this way. So to me, it's pretty deep. To me, there's a lot of stuff that I need to do. But I think that there's a time and a place for it. And so I'm glad to be able to talk about it now. I think it's just really important to know if there's a time and a place and you're trying to do these things naturally, how much you want to bet most people will have such a meaningful, this happens every day. I get tons of DMs every day. I felt like shit. I had issues with my hormones and I started following some of these things and now I feel way better. I'm building more muscle. I'm finally the husband that my wife married. I'm finally the dad that my boys deserve. Because I started doing these fucking things. I'm like, oh God, thank God. So people need to do these things because they work. Let's say people are doing these things and it's not working out. Go get monitored. No matter what, you gotta go to a trained hormone clinician. You just try and go to a guy at the gym, you know, and you're gonna take something that might not be pure. You know, you might do a whole lot more harm than good, and you got to get monitored. You know, like for me to figure out my exact dose, I had to get monitored. I have such a specific dose. You know, for me to feel the way, to feel good and to make sure it doesn't have an effect on my lipids or any other chemistry, I needed the exact dose, and I wouldn't know that without being monitored.
Remember, you're talking to a complete idiot about this stuff, so I'm gonna ask you some basic questions. You just shoot yourself with a needle in the ass, or what is the application process?
Well,
like?
I'm glad you're asking because I think one of my sons actually asked mom that the other day. So growth hormone is right here in the stomach or right here on the side. Just it's subcutaneous in the fat, and then once a week we do testosterone in the ass.
In the ass, and like you self-administer
in the ass cheek, just so you guys know.
and you're doing it yourself, or somebody's helping you. Like, how does that work?
Both. You know, sometimes I might do it myself. You know, sometimes I'm like, liver queen, not feeling real flexible today. Help me out a little bit.
And then when you do this, in one of the emails, I can't remember if it was the email or maybe one of the conversations, you said that you would take it before you went to work out, right? And so could people go and get this stuff? They do it. Would their bodies change at all?
This is
like
really
if you
important.
don't work out, what happens?
There's the overwhelming majority of people that are on hormone replacement therapy and TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, they still look like shit. You know, they might feel better, right? And they might look better. But most people, I mean, I guess it's important to know if you think you're going to take that and you're going to look incredible, like you got another thing coming. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to go into it. But I would say, I don't know if you heard, but I'm going to peel all this stuff back. I'm not going to take it anymore.
You're going to go completely clean.
That's right.
What's going to happen to your body?
Well, this is, why I wanted to share this, because I hope you'll have me on in a year.
Yeah.
And I'll weigh 15
I'm
pounds
going to be
less.
bigger than you.
you might be.
Get the TRT!
You might be. But, I mean, I know exactly how I looked before.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I bet if you saw me before, you'd probably be like, he looks pretty similar. Most people in the fitness industry know the difference. So we're talking about a 15-pound difference.
So you weighed like, I think you said 175 at one point earlier, before you took this a year and a half ago or whatever, about 175, and now you're like 190, 200?
Yeah, I'm 195. So I probably am up to between 175 and 185-ish without anything.
So you lose 10, 15 pounds basically by coming off of it. And then
and just for the record, that's when I had reached out to get on growth hormone. I had been on some testosterone replacement therapy a couple of years prior.
And so when you reached out to these people, one of the things that when I saw all the emails, I saw Derek's thing, and I saw podcasts, I was like, oh shit, here we go. He's gonna go through the fucking ringer. And there's one or two paths that you can choose. You can either, no, that's not true, that's bullshit email, whatever, or you can just be like, yes, that's true, I'm sorry, right, which is the path you took. How many people did you email before Liver King became a thing? And the reason why that was one of my first thoughts was like, dude, this guy's been living like this for a year and a half, knowing there's fucking emails out there that disprove something that he is saying on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. So was it just Derek and this coach, or did you email like 200 people and everyone's stupid and didn't check their email?
200 people. No.
I was like, holy shit.
Just the two of them. Yeah.
Really? So just those two guys basically, or very small number of people that you emailed.
And I do want to make it clear, I don't think Derek did anything wrong. I called Derek almost immediately, just say, thank you for doing this. I don't know what good will come of it, but thank you for doing this. I asked him how long it took to make such an incredible documentary. I was really impressed, actually, how he put it all together. I mean, the way that he went through the email and read everything I wrote, and the way he laughed at certain things, I'm like, oh, I would laugh at that too. When he laughed at it, I'm like, oh, I said that exactly. And I'm laughing at it too.
The emails are funny.
I agree.
Like, I don't know how you were writing them. I don't know if you were like ready to, put fucking TRT in your ass as you were doing some shit, but like they were hilarious.
Thank you. When he went over, I'm like, I said all that. And it's me to a T. I'm like, well, there's no disputing any of this now. And there's no doubt, like I also saw this as a path, to me be exactly who I need to be, to express who I actually am. I've been honest about everything else. That this one thing, this has been weighing on me for a long time. And so
did you like go to sleep and you're like, fuck, tomorrow may be the day they figure it out?
Oh, no.
Just like over the year and a half when you knew these emails were out there, or did you even forget that you'd sent them?
I know that a superpower that I have is focus and compartmentalizing. And so this is not a lingering thought that I had. Now, I referred to him as the clown coach, the other guy who I had reached out to. And I say that because he made a video saying that he refunded my money, that he was not technically my coach. So if he wasn't technically my coach, was there technically a breach of confidentiality? He's trying to pose these kind of rhetorical questions.
So you're like pretty sure he's the one who leaked this.
He admits it.
Okay.
He says, I'm the guy who leaked it. And I know right now he's trying to save face because he has all of his coaching clients saying, hold on, you're going to leak my information? You're telling me that what we exchange is not confidential? And so...
is it clout chasing to some degree?
I don't know.
Like he wants to be the guy who like outed you, or is it just like all the press is good press? Like what do you think is going on?
I'm not really sure, but I just want to make it clear because we're being honest about everything.
Yeah.
He did not refund my money, and I'm not asking for a penny back. Actually, okay.
How much do you think you paid him?
It was probably like $5,000 or $6,000.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, I don't need a penny back, and he was my coach. And he did send those emails to somebody else. Again, I think what he did, there's some issues there. What Derek did to bring all the information forward, I don't think Derek did anything wrong. And there's so many silver linings that have come from this.
How much money do you think you've spent total on steroids, hormone replacement therapy, et cetera, over your life?
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt it's all comes from the growth hormone, because testosterone is like maybe $100, $120 for like a 3-month supply. So you take out the testosterone, and all I tried was Winstrol and nandrolone maybe twice for that's dirt cheap too.
Okay.
And so you're looking at the growth. The better question probably is like how much you think you spent on growth hormone. Growth hormone is expensive.
Like how expensive?
Well, here's the thing. For me to be in the normal range, so at first it's like, oh, you just need the small dose.
Mm-hmm.
So here's maybe it was like $2,000 a month at first, and so I would go and get tested and nothing would register. No growth hormone, no IGF-1 increase. So it's like, okay, let's double it. And so fuck, now I'm gonna spend $4,000 a month. So we tried doubling it and nothing happened. We tried doubling it, nothing happened. And I'm like, now we're spending all this money and nothing's happening. And my blood chemistry is getting fucked up. I'm getting pretty frustrated. I'm reaching out to Derek. I'm reaching out to this other guy for help. And finally, we got to a pretty high dose. Again, I don't know if you saw the email. The clinician thinks I was a hyper non-responder, whatever that means. But it took a pretty high dose, so it took the average person would never have to spend this much money on it.
How much are you spending?
Listen, it's enough.
No, I need a number. Come on, what is the number?
It's enough to buy a car every month.
50 grand?
No, not
Okay,
a 50 grand.
All right, 30 grand?
Do you know the number that he said in the email?
I don't remember.
Okay, so the number I think at the time was
Like 10 or 12?
was like maybe 10 to 15,000.
Okay.
It's a little bit more than that.
So like 20 grand?
Yeah.
Do you think you spend $250,000 on growth hormone over the last year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
$1 million?
No, not $1 million.
You're saying that like it's crazy.
Well, let me tell you what's really incredible about this.
All right.
Derek shared my email with the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I have dozens of emails that have come in that say, you know, you're paying double the price. And because I ain't going to nobody, you know, after I got this locked and loaded. But hey, guess what? The world knows. And so now consistently, so many clinicians and hormone clinics have come in and said, boom, here's a new quote. It's half the price. We're also a clinic, endocrinologist, medical director, yada, yada, yada. And so far, I'm like, thank you, Derek, for that.
Yeah.
You know, but pretty soon I'm going to save 100%. Right now I'm saving 50%. Hopefully soon I'm going to save 100%.
So basically you spend about $250,000 on steroids and got 1 million followers
That
on
sounds
social
really
media.
bad to say, $250,000,
But I mean, it just is what it is, right? Like, I don't even think it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing because there's a lot of people who take growth hormone for medical purposes under the consultation of a physician or whatever, and they're probably spending the same amount of money, right? Or maybe they're spending half of that, but they've done it for 5 years.
I want to make it clear, very few people will need the amount that I'm
What do you
taking
think the
to get a
average
normal range.
the person who's taking it, all the caveats, they're supposed to take it, the physician tells them to take it, whatever. What do you think they spend on growth hormone? Like maybe 50 grand a year?
Well, first of all, again, keep in mind, I've been a hyper non-responder,
Yep.
right? And so I think the average person might be closer to 1,000 or 2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think we're
so
talking-
maybe like $12,000 to $24,000 a month.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was public math. That was pretty good on the fly. All right. I want to talk about one other thing, which is Joe Rogan. A couple months ago, I think was saying, no fucking way. He's definitely on steroids. Just look at him. Like, there's no way you can do that, whatever. I saw you get asked about it. And you had like very nice things to say about Joe. And I think that you were like, look, I look up to this guy in some form or fashion. I enjoy his content, all this stuff. And you took kind of the high road, I think, in the response. He had Derek come on. They had a fucking blast.
Yeah.
And Joe basically was just like, what are you guys talking about? Of course he was on steroids, right? What is it like? Joe Rogan's got the biggest media platform in the world. He's bigger than all the mainstream media, all this stuff. What is kind of your reaction or your thoughts of seeing that conversation happen? And they're talking about you. It's not, They're not talking about something you do. They're talking about you. What are you thinking as you're watching that?
Yeah. Well, two things. Earlier, you had asked about like how I felt about something, and I'll tell you how I felt about that. Initially, is I feel like a piece of shit. You know, this whole time he's been saying this whole time I've been lying. Mm-hmm. So first thing I feel like is a piece of shit. I also just want to make it clear I'm not asking for any sympathy. I did that. I did all of it. I deserve all of it. I lied about it. I was wrong to do all of that, right? I am sorry for that. That's what I'm sorry for. And then I'm watching the two exchange here. Really, there's one thing that upset me. And it's when he talked about the 4,000 people a day. I'm talking about the 4,000 people a day that kill themselves and the 80,000 people a day that try. And the way that he chuckled about that pissed me off. You know, that pissed me off because I think you got such a big platform. You got a responsibility and an obligation to address this. Hate me, think I'm a clown. He's been on this the whole fine. But I think he should have paused for a second and said, hold on a second. This is not a conversation about Liver King. This is a second where we're going to say this is a problem. And if you are thinking like this way, you do need to get some help. I was frustrated about that. But then I thought, they talked about Liver King for 35 minutes. I was not physically on the show, and they talked about me for 35 minutes. Do you know how many times I've been on Joe Rogan's show without actually physically being there? He's talked about, I can't believe it. And then he said, he's been front row at my comedy. I saw him at the Canelo fight. I've seen him at the UFC. And he's talked about me so many times.
Are you guys boys? Like, are you friends?
I've never met him before.
Okay, so you guys never talked before, like in person?
I've always, if I've seen him, I would love to have a conversation with him. Again, I think that what he's done is incredible. I still hold him in the highest regard. I think he's a giant. He's done something that no one else has ever done. And most of the ancestral tenets he's talking about, not in this organized, packaged way, but he talks about liver all the time. He talks about thermal pressures and getting cold and sauna all the time. I mean, he talks about virtually all 9 ancestral tenets all the time. And so I'm really just grateful. Towards the end of that, he's saying how great liver is. The other guy's saying he eats liver every day. And really and thank God I'd already taken this load off me. I made an apology video. I did what I needed to do for me to move forward. And so now he's just making fun of that with a lot of chuckle, and I deserve all of it. The one thing that I think that I wish he had done better is address the suicide thing in a different way. But other than that, I'm like, hey, I deserve it. I feel like a piece of shit. I own all of it. Bring it all on, except for that one thing. And then at the end of it, he bookended it with saying, in my opinion, what he said is, liver is king. I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, I think most people, all my friends who you've talked to, got on their podcast, et cetera, is just like, 95% of this stuff is like very real, and people should know it. They should follow it. They should do all this stuff. The steroid thing, like, I think it's split actually. Half of them are like, oh, he told me that he didn't take steroids, and he did. Like, he lied to me. The other half of them are like, dude, are you guys fucking kidding me? Like, the dude's 45 years old.
I've got a lot of that.
Old. Like, he's ripped out of his mind. Did you think he wasn't on steroids?
Listen, I've gotten so much of that. Like, hold on, you guys actually didn't think he was already. But I also still want to own that. A lot of people gave me the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people believed in me. One guy, Joe Aesthetic, believed in me so deeply, he took 10 minutes to explain to me and the rest of his community why I'm natural. And that probably tugged at my heart more than anything else because of how much he believed in me. And so I want to take credit for that. Nobody had deceived themselves. I did all that.
How do you balance in your head? You create Liver King, you take steroids, you absolutely explode on social media. One thing no one will take away from you is you fucking exploded on social media. You built this massive audience. And again, 95% of the things you're talking about, there's a lot of people with big audiences who are very educated, much more educated than me on fitness and diet and all these things. And they're like, yep, all this makes a ton of sense. And then there is the accusation that some of those people in the audience are going in there buying the supplements. They're doing all this stuff. And to me, I don't think people are dumb enough to actually believe if I take a supplement, I'm going to look like that. But there are definitely people who say, oh, this guy is cool, or this is something I aspire to, right? And so he has a product and I go and I buy it. So there's like nuance to it. But how do you kind of think through where maybe the critics are right and maybe where they're not as accurate in terms of your rise as Liver King and the use of PEDs and then like impact on your businesses?
Yeah. This is really complex because overall, we talked about these statistics and how desperately people are hurting. People, the average person today goes to a job that they hate. They come home to a life that they don't love. They sedate themselves with enough screen time, with enough bullshit that their day's not really meaningful, right? This is my true north. And so the critics... And I should be criticized for so much more than this, but the critics of the ancestral lifestyle, normally what I say is I push back and I say, you had your fucking time. You had your chance. Your ways didn't work. The world is hurting at record rates. I told you all the statistics. None of that's changed. All those are facts. You can't criticize that shit, right? And you can't criticize that. What my message is, this is the message of our ancestors, of your ancestors, of what you're trying to critique. And so I would just say, remember that the true north will always remain the true north. You don't got to buy anything from me, right? You don't got to follow me. You don't got to engage with me, but you do have to follow and engage with other CEOs of the ancestral lifestyle, like Ben Greenfield, like Andrew Huberman, like the other people that are advancing this, because most people hate their life. Your life fucking sucks. There's a better life to live. It's called ancestral living. And so the critique about if I benefited from this message and my supplements, I'm wrong about all that. Again, I deserve all that, you know. And if somebody wants to go, first of all, I hope they don't go anywhere else, right? But all I care about is, I talk about this all the time. You got to get liver in your life because liver is king. Go on a hunt, first and foremost. That kind of connection with the animal and land will do more for you than getting it anywhere else. If you can't do that, go to the butcher. If you can't go to the butcher, go to the find a way to get liver. There will always be a segment of the population that's going to say, fuck all that. Give me the pill, right? You don't got to get it from any of my companies. Go get the pill. Go get the liver pill from Amazon. Go do your research. Go look at the reviews and go get it from somebody else. Don't, because of me, you can't be disloyal to the facts that this is how bad people are hurting and there's a better way to live. You got to get this into your life. You don't got to get it from me. So I would just say, I think that there's truth. There's weight to what the critics have said. I deserve it all. And if somebody, again, I hope they continue to engage with the message. And all I care about is go on that hunt, go get liver, go do these 9 ancestral tenets, because the world is hurting and this is a better life to live.
You've been incredibly, I think, kind to the critics in the sense of, you're like, look, I deserve all of this. Is there one critic where you're like, yo, fuck that person? Like, they just gone above and beyond in the hate and just like coming after you?
You know what's really interesting? My disposition, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before. I say this to my kids all the time. And I alluded to this earlier. When you read text or you hear a word, right, especially if you hear it like, these are broken down to syllables. These vibrations go into your ear canal. Your brain assigns meaning to it. The meaning that I assign immediately is how bad that person is hurting and hating their life. And so I've not gotten upset at anybody. I've never said, hey, man, go fuck yourself. You're wrong about all this. I will say there's one time that I felt really frustrated.
Okay.
And it's with this coaching clown that came up and said all these lies. I refunded his money, X, Y, and Z. The silver lining is here. He's not unraveling any of the ancestral tenets. You know, I think he's just trying to save himself. And I don't even know why that bothers me. You know, I won't even say his name because I don't want to promote him, you know. But anyone else, you say I've been nice about it. I think, I'm glad you're saying that. I'm just being 100% earnest and sincere about it. When this whole thing happened, it's like, okay, what is getting mad going to do? I did this. Like, if there's anyone to be mad at, you fucking idiot. I mean, I look at myself and you asshole for about 5 seconds. And now guess what, man? You got to claw your way out of this, because the message is so much bigger than you and your brand. And if your brand is gone tomorrow, I got to work with 100 other CEOs of the ancestral lifestyle. You know, sometimes people talk about, oh, all this money I make, you know, because I make a lot of money. How
much you make?
Well, I have 3 companies that do 100 million plus a year.
All 3 do 100 or
no, combined? And this is what I want to say about that. Okay, what do I do with it? You know what I do with it? I make other ancestral companies. I reinvest that money to make other ancestral companies, other CEOs of the ancestral lifestyle, to advance this message, to have 100 ancestral companies in 100 different categories. That's how deeply I believe in this.
So $100 million in revenue. Hold on a second. This is a big ass business. $100 million in revenue. How many employees do you think you have across all the businesses?
50.
50. That's fucking $2 million in revenue per employee. That's a big, that's a fantastic business, right?
Yeah.
Is this something that other people can replicate, or do you think that you have like unique skills and knowledge to be able to do
you know what,
like
I'm in this mastermind group where very few people have that kind of revenue to employee ratio, and they're like, oh, you know, and then I hear how they talk about their employees, and I'm like, that's why, you know, because I think the highest leverage opportunity is to hire true believers. I got into this because of how deeply I believe in this, because of my kids, because of how badly people are hurting. I only hire people in my companies that have been through a health crisis, that have recovered their health crisis through ancestral living. And through this whole issue, I'm the one who has compromised. I've compromised the perimeter. I know that. And that's why, like, I better do a goddamn good job moving forward. I always say our sustainable competitive advantage is we only hire true believers. We care more deeply and we care more. Because you know how many people want to go do this for money?
Of course.
I'm like, oh, cool. You know, like, do you even know what money is? And I'm like, let's talk about what money is. Money is a proxy for the value that we create in the world. And so all you want to do is go create more of that, but you don't even know why you want to create it. I figured out why I want to create it, because my kids couldn't breathe. You know, because of people like Kat, who couldn't have a kid, had infertility issues, and started doing ancestral living. Now she has a beautiful baby. You know, we have an employee, Ben, who was bedridden. with intractable depression, intractable Crohn's disease, and recovered his life and is kicking ass because ancestral living. There's this other kid, Saul, who lost 60 pounds, who's reconnected with the outside world. You see this joy in life that otherwise wouldn't be possible with ancestral living. So what I would like to say is, I hope there's thousands of people that replicate this business, but you better do it by putting the why at the center of what you're doing, because I need everyone. I had one guy come up to me one time. He was like, hey man, I want to open up a business just like yours, exactly like yours. And I said, cool. And he goes, what do you mean cool? Like, I'm going to be your competitor. Like, you think you are going to be my competitor? And I said, listen, here's the issue. The world doesn't know about ancestral living. The world doesn't know about organs and glands. If you do a good job, you're my greatest ally in the world. I'll tell you how to do everything. But here's the thing, you don't give a shit about people. And because you don't give a shit about people, you can't do this and you're not the right person. But this is what I need. I need hundreds and thousands of people to say, I want businesses just like you. But it has to come from in here. Their why has to be probably because they recovered a health crisis themselves or for their family. And then they need to only hire true believers, because you hire a true believer, they'll do the work at 10. I'm sure you know this. You hired one right hire, it changes your entire company. Imagine if all your hires are the right hire. It changes everything. And so this is, when I say that this is really nuanced and complex, I don't know if you heard my apology video. I said, man, this is complicated as shit to me. And you know how much criticism I got? They're like, no, it's not. You're either on steroids or you're not. Well, this is one of the complexities, the layers of the nuances. I have all these companies that I've hired with true believers that have come here to do some goddamn good, to make their greatest contribution in the world, and I'm letting them down. I have compromised the perimeter. But I also say to them, you didn't come here for me. You came here because you had your greatest why in the world. You've recovered this health crisis, and now you know that you need to do this with other people. If you're here for me, you're not here for the right reason. There's the door. But you're here to do this, and I'm going to do anything and everything in my power to help create the right environment, the right culture. And I also want to make it really clear, I don't lead any of my companies. You know,
You're not the CEO of any of them.
None of them. They have their own leadership team, their own culture, their own chemistry, their own electricity, their own values. You know, I may have helped give a blueprint and an ethos, but I've always said, if it's the same as the way I left it, you guys fucked up horribly, right? Nothing should stay the same. You guys should do this thing on your own.
Anybody quit when all this came out?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I hope nobody does.
You think somebody will?
I know I've made some issues.
Yeah.
I know I've created
some
some
people
issues.
who are upset.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, this is like a classic business story, right? It's like there's a leader, whether they're actually running the business or they're the founder or whatever. They do something. Sometimes it's like super controversial. They get caught, you know, breaking the law or doing something like that. Sometimes it's bad business decisions. Sometimes they say something about politics that has nothing to do with the business, but people don't want to be associated with that or whatever. And then you got to deal with like this, like real life shit, right? Now you got to deal with, yo, I got all these great people that work for me. We got these businesses that are going. Fucking turmoil inside, right?
Yeah, you know that's tugs at my heart amongst, you know, like I would say, I feel like the kids that I've let down, that's the worst. And then I think about the people in my companies. They move their whole families here, you know, and this has been the hardest thing to find, are people that are true believers, that are capable of doing, you know, what they're doing. So man, I really hope not.
Yeah.
And
it's possible, but you're hoping not. Are you a billionaire?
No.
Bullshit. I'm doing the fucking math in my head. I think that you're a billionaire.
I'm not.
All right, well, let's talk about it, because you do $100 million in revenue. Listen, you can go eat donuts with Schultz, but I fucking do math. Do $100 million in revenue, right? You got 50 employees. You're probably doing $50+ million in profit. 20 times multiple on that. Like, you probably are close to a billionaire. And I'm not saying that in like a derogatory way, and people may get mad about it, but like in some way, like if you are a billionaire, you've had a fucking run from an entrepreneurial standpoint. That's probably one of the better runs in recent memory for people. And nobody thinks of you that way. Like in some way, Liver King is one of the best fucking founders in the world, hiding under everyone's nose. And people will say, "Oh, he took steroids. He's not it doesn't count," or whatever, right? Okay, lay all the critiques, but you're a fucking billionaire.
First of all, I'm not.
Okay, we'll disagree. But go ahead.
I'll also say I'm not really far, and I hope I've never wanted to identify with that. You know, everything that I've done in business, I did before the Liver King launched. The Liver King is brand new. You know, a lot of people like, oh, Liver King did all this stuff. He made all of his money, you know, from this sort of deception.
I'm saying throw that out. I'm talking about you as an entrepreneur. Forget Liver King, forget the fucking character, all that. I'm talking about if you build businesses that do $100 million in revenue with the employee base, literally for you get off the internet tomorrow. That is one of the most impressive fucking entrepreneurial stories.
Thank you. You know,
in the last decade.
I deserve it. I know I earned it, you know, and I know that I earned it because, again, the why in the world, what we're doing. And this is why I welcome everyone to continue to do it. I don't need more money. This is why more money is going into doing 100 of these businesses, because that's the only thing I care about is advancing this message, making sure people acknowledge at how desperately people are hurting and that there's a simple solution to a better life. But the only pushback I want to give is just to remember, you said Liver King aside, right? But Liver King's only been here for a year and a couple of months, right? And so if we had the same discussion about how much money we were making a year and a couple of months ago, it's not that different. It's not that different. Liver King was strong. My companies were strong before Liver King. My companies will continue to be strong after Liver King.
You mentioned employees. Obviously, there's some things you got to work through. Partnerships, things like that. Have other people had issues as well? Or is this more of your employees are somebody that you trust, they join because they're true believers, things like that. But the partners are like,
you
hey,
ask all the right questions.
Our sales fucking flying off the shelf.
I was really hoping you weren't asking this one.
Bro, you come on, that's what I do for a living. Of course I'm going to ask this shit.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, let me do the math. I'm like, yeah, he knows. There's one partnership that might not withstand this storm.
Got it. And it's more so they just want to distance themselves from controversy in general, I'm assuming.
You know what? I don't want to talk about any of the personal things related to that, but there's one. And again, I know I did this. Yeah. And that's actually the hardest thing on me is like, fuck, all this stuff I did could compromise this one incredible. It's not a company. It's like it's a living, breathing thing where everybody believes in what we're doing. And once again, I got to be like, I did that. You know, like, you know, when you don't believe what you did was wrong, man, you'll fucking defend it. You will die on that hill. There's no dying on, I can't defend this thing.
Are you reading my text messages with my wife? I didn't do that, right? Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, like I do think that it's easy for people to point and say, "Oh, you said X, you did Y, whatever." Wrong. I think you've said it's wrong. We can sit here and beat that, you know, till it's dead. But there's also like real life shit that's attached to this, and you know, I usually see it from the investor seat with companies I've invested in where something goes wrong, and I'm on Twitter, just like everybody else. I'm fucking doom scrolling, usually late at night, right before I go to sleep, like I'm not supposed to. And I'm reading it and I'm like, man, these people are just laying into XYZ person or company or whatever. And I'm like, they got no clue the shit that person's dealing with right now because they got their employees, they got their investors, they got their own fucking families. Like you start thinking about this stuff. And
that's an interesting perspective because again, of course I know that. Yeah. I'm thinking nobody fucking knows that. And nobody, listen, again, I'm not asking for sympathy, but you're the first person who's ever actually said that. You know, the layers deep that this goes. My wife and I said a long time ago, I would never have a partner ever again. Because in the dental business, we took on a partner. And then the mission that we wanted to drive became convoluted. You know, when you can no longer do exactly what you want to do, and it's not driven by your benevolent principles, now we got an issue because now it gets driven by an ulterior. I'll just tell you. Okay, she wants to give people liver, bone marrow, and egg yolk. Okay, the surgeon's like, well, hold on a second, you're gonna put me out of business. You know, and he's a percent partner now too. Hey, this isn't okay. I don't want you telling people how to fix the root cause. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why would I not? And so after that, she goes, hey, anybody you interview, you tell them in the interview, 0% equity is on the table, and it never will be. And so all my interviews, that's what I shared with people. Well, I got softened up and started to believe over time. And I don't think anything's wrong about it. I think that I chose the best partner in the world to do this with. Again, this is of my own creation. And so I know you hear this all the time, but it's like you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. You can go fast and far with a group of true believers. When you believe that deeply and you got those principles, you've been really public about your why. This is the great thing about like when you're really public about your why in the world and you could then only hire other true believers, you can do incredible things together. So I did that. I'm like, oh, and again, there's so many complexities that come into that come into play. So there's a lot going through my head right now, and again, I listen, I'm in the middle of it. I'm going to deal with all of it. And some people are like, hey, why aren't you doing this? I'm like, listen, do you know how much is going on and what I'm dealing with and how I'm trying, to do the right thing here? But there's a lot of moving pieces to it. You're right.
My last question for you is Rogan, after he was like, yeah, I told you guys, blah, blah, whatever. He said he thinks The Rock's on steroids. You think The Rock's on steroids?
Here's the thing.
No, don't. Here's the thing. What, do you think The Rock is on steroids?
I'm not picking any fights with anybody. I don't think he should have picked that fight either.
Well, there's bad blood.
Well, how so?
People forget this, and this is my external perception. When the mob came for Rogan, and I think I told you, when Andrew Schultz was one of the first comedians to stand up and say, "Hey, I know this dude," whatever. The Rock actually posted initially and said, he's not racist, I know this guy, or something like that. And then the mob came after him. Oh. And he basically backtracked. He was on fucking roller skates. And he was like, oh, sorry, I didn't see the video, or whatever he said. And again, like, I never judge anyone because I don't know, was he getting phone calls from people? Was something going on? Did he see something I didn't see? I have no clue. But there was almost like a retraction. And my guess is that that left a bad taste in
wow,
Rogan's
I didn't
mouth.
know that. I mean, here's the thing. The Rock, what he's accomplished.
I think he's going to be president.
Yeah, he could be.
I've been saying this for years now. I think The Rock will be the president of the United States. But if Joe Rogan asks him if he does steroids, then that's going to be a...
Again, you don't want to pick a fight with The Rock, literally or figuratively. I mean, this is not the guy, And so I'll just say, I think what The Rock has done has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And so is he on? First of all, I don't think he's on steroids. Is he taking any hormone replacement therapy? I don't know.
What percentage of American men do you think is taking any kind of hormone, TRT, GHG, stuff like that? Like, is it like 1%, or do you think it's like 20%?
I bet it's tiny.
Oh,
I bet it's about 5%. And I think the clinics know that most men, because of the lifestyles that they lead today, because of the things that are within their control, like the 9 ancestral tenets, they could recover this. But a lot of these clinics know we got such a tiny fraction of the population that are underserved. I wish the hormone clinics could also get behind this message. It's not real good for business, for the financial piece
of it. Still 5 or 10 million men.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, just in the United States, you start doing 5% depending on how you want to calculate adults and like all these different numbers or whatever.
I bet if you tested, though, you have such a significant amount.
That need it.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say that need it. That need to increase it. Find a way to increase it.
Do it either naturally or that way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can't believe you tried to make me make an enemy with The Rock. I love The Rock.
No, not an enemy. I mean, look, it's interesting that you said that you wouldn't fuck with him though, because I seen Joe Rogan do some roundhouse kicks. I won't fuck with Rogan either. Right?
Yeah, I still wouldn't fuck with Rogan. It's like, again, you'll never hear me say anything negative about anybody. Like, that's not in me. I'm not capable of that. You hear people say, oh, it takes two to tango. Well, guess what? We won't be doing that. I'm not capable of that. I know why you're doing what you're doing. You're hurting. Man, you're hurting, and I can see you're hurting. And the last thing you need is a guy to engage to now engage with that kind of thing. I still think what Rogan does is incredible. I think what The Rock does is incredible. I don't think anyone should attempt to discount somebody's achievements and go where they're going by saying any of that kind of stuff. If I have the chance to meet either of them, I hope one day that I have the chance to meet with both of them and have this to have a great conversation. Because, man, like, you put down the phone and you do what we're doing today, like, doesn't that just fill you up?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Ancestral Tenet 9, which is bond. Put down the goddamn phone and just connect with people. And to be able to do that with giants like that, PBD said to me the other day, hey, man, who do you have around you that's way better than you? And I said, I got people around me. Number one, my wife. But now I'm looking at him like, well, now you, and I hope to God one day I have Joe Rogan, and I hope to God one day I have The Rock, And again, I'm not saying I was hoping this opportunity would come, but it's come. Derek has helped me face my reality. This is it. And it's also led to some incredible opportunities for me to be as transparent as we have been today about it, and for me to have some of these incredible connections. So I'm filled with nothing but gratitude.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking about it. I think just sitting down and talking to people, you learn so much more about it. And there's plenty of people who will watch this and be like, nope, I still hate this motherfucker.
Yeah.
And people who are like, I love them, right? And everything in between. And so I'll keep having the conversations, and I'm just thankful for you to come here, and I appreciate it. And I wish all the best to you and your incredible family, who, for those that don't know, there's like 17,000 people in this room right now who have been listening this entire time. But I really appreciate it, and we'll definitely do it again in the future.
Hell yeah. Thank you.